Thanks, Matt, and welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. I just want to echo I want to echo Matt's sentiments in saying how fantastic it is that we've got such a broad audience from across the world now. It's really exciting to see, and it's very exciting to be part of this conference. I think despite Zoom, it's going to be Matt and the team at NPF have really put together some really interesting presentations and some fun and interactive activities that I think everybody's going to enjoy. So thanks very much. As Matt said, I have had psoriasis for over 30 years now. I was diagnosed when I was 24 years old. And for those of you that do the math, you can now figure out just about how old I am. Anyway, I've been a volunteer at the foundation for probably over 20 years now, serving on the board for 12, and I've been the chairman of the board of directors for the past year, and will be so for the next year as well. And one of the really exciting jobs that the chairperson has is also to help and to direct and to lead the strategic planning effort. And we thought it would be a really good idea today to give everybody just a brief thumbnail sketch of a year's worth of work and thousands of person hours worth of work, and just touch on some of the building blocks of the new strategic plan that the National Psoriasis Foundation has put into place. So if we could go to the next slide, as you can see on your screen now, our plan was approved and launched on July 1st, 2019. So we've been in this for a year now. Been in this plan for a year, but the planning for this started a year before that. And you can see the tremendous number of people that had a significant part in putting this plan together. We had volunteers, we had psoriatics, we had people from industry, we had experts from both a clinical and a research perspective, and it really gave a tremendous amount of broad and really critical input into the strategic plan. And we split up into three groups. First was, as you can see, discovery, health outcomes, and capacity building. And you'll see on the next slide that our strategic plan is broken into those three categories. And we have three goals, and the goals are in the pie shape on the screen now. The first, and the one that Matt described, is to lead collaborative and transformational research. And these words are very intentional. And you can, for those of you that have been around, you can see the word lead, and that's a really critical component in our thinking for these next 5 years. We want to be, we're not doing the research, but we want to guide and drive the research in a really important and transformational way. That means generate research to result in a higher number of patients in remission, fund a diagnostic test for psoriatic arthritis that has broad clinical utility, and establish, and this is really important, establish a multi-institution, multidisciplinary, team-based virtual cluster to identify an intervention that will prevent the onset of psoriatic disease. So we've tried to bring together the leaders in research to do a collaborative project, and that you'll hear more about that. But you'll hear more about that when Stacy presents some of the research agendas. But we really feel like, and we're devoting significant resources towards it. So it's a really interesting and comprehensive research agenda. The second goal in the kind of orangish pie there And again, these are intentional words, is to increase the lifespan and health of individuals living with psoriatic disease. Very powerful and simple statement. And what does that mean? The first thing is we have to define what our baseline is. So develop and disseminate a report on health expectancy and lifespan prognosis. The second thing is we need to improve physician awareness and education on optimal care of individuals living with psoriatic disease, and raise the awareness of psoriatic disease and its related comorbidities. So it's a again, multidisciplinary, multifunctional approach to really improving patients' lives and patient outcomes. And that's what that's one of the key planks and key strategic elements that that the board and the committee wanted to make sure to emphasize. And lastly, in the kind of dark blue pie, we need to secure the resources necessary to achieve our goals. And this means not just the financial resources, which are important, but we need the physical resources, the people resources, the volunteer resources. And we have we've got a comprehensive plan to drive that resource gathering. So as I said, there was a ton of work and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that were put into developing this plan. And behind, this one slide, as you can well imagine, behind this one slide, there are goals and there are metrics and there are timelines and there are, red, yellow, green signs and all that. But what we've tried to do in this one page is really talk about the three critical elements that are going to drive our organization forward in the next 5 years. So we're well on our way. We're very excited about it. It's the most ambitious plan that the organization has pulled together. And I'm going to turn it over to Randy to see if I missed anything, because Randy and Leah and Stacy and Emily, who you will all hear from, were the key drivers of this plan inside our organization. And so Randy, as Chief Executive Officer, is there anything that I missed or anything you'd like to add?
Well, thanks, Chip. The quick answer is no, you didn't miss anything. And I think Chip, beautifully laid out what our ambitions are as an organization on behalf of our community, and they're impactful and they're clear and concise, and that's by design. And so I think you did a beautiful job, Chip, of laying it out. I do have a couple of things I want to add though before we get started with the real meat of the session. I want to join Chip and Matt in adding my welcome to everyone. I scrolled through and seen some of the folks that are on there. There's too many for me to catch all. I'll do that while we progress with the agenda, but a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones. And that's exciting for me. And it's too bad we couldn't all be together in person. That's a phrase that all of us have used a lot in the past 7 months. But it's a wonderful opportunity for us to connect with the people that we care most about today. And I want to thank Chip and Matt in particular for all the hard work that they put in to make this day happen. And Matt and Chip, as they both mentioned, serve on the NPS Board of Directors. They're the governing body of the organization. And Chip probably gives a little too much credit to the staff in saying that we drive the strategic plan within the organization. We are a seamless organization comprised of a very small number of professional staff, an enormous number of advocates, volunteers, policymakers, manufacturers, providers, patients, and their loved ones. And I think everyone on this call probably fits into one of those categories. And that's who really drives the strategic plan and the day-to-day mission of the organization. And throughout the course of today, you'll hear of a number of different ways in which you can engage with the NPF. For those of you who have been a part of the NPF for a number of years, this is old hat to you, but there's an awful lot of folks who are here for the first time. They're getting their first real exposure to who the NPF is and how we intend and how we go about improving health outcomes for people that live with psoriatic disease. And so throughout the course of the day, you're going to hear a lot of opportunities for you to connect with the organization. And I encourage all of you not only to do that yourself, but to invite others to come join our merry band, as we like to say. Whether you're an advocate and you reach out to your elected officials to advance and support policy that are favorable to people with psoriatic disease, or you're a healthcare provider and you see patients and are providing the care that helps them improve their health outcomes, or you're a loved one of someone that lives with psoriatic disease, or you're a fundraising volunteer. You participate and like to raise money for our research and education and advocacy initiatives, or you're someone that's on the education side and help others through our various platforms on how to help manage their disease better. There's a place for everyone in the organization that's on here today, and I encourage all of you to engage throughout the course of the year until we're together again in helping us drive the mission that in the strategic plan that Chip spoke about. COVID-19 has affected every part of life that all of us know, and it's affected the National Psoriasis Foundation as well. We've had to make adjustments. Our business model has changed dramatically, as well as the scope of some of the things that we're able to do. We, like many organizations, had to reduce our budget significantly. We had to reduce our professional staff and scale back slightly our investment in research just because of the conditions that exist. But we need all of your help to continue to drive that, because our intent is, regardless of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on the world that we live in, the impacts of psoriatic disease have not lessened for our community. In fact, it's probably been exacerbated by this. And so we're counting on all of you to be a part of our mission and driving our strategic plan day in and day out, and encourage you to engage wherever you can, and encourage everyone that you know to join with you in supporting the National Psoriasis Foundation. Again, welcome. Enjoy this great day. You're going to have a lot of great information. And on behalf of the volunteers and staff of the NPF, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Definitely appreciate it, and the kind words. For everybody, our next topic is going to be an update on the latest in psoriatic disease research. We're first going to show you a brief video featuring Dr. Stacy Bell, who's the Foundation's Chief Scientific and Medical Officer. She joined the Foundation in 2018, and she directs our research activities, educational programming for medical professionals. That will be followed by a presentation by one of Dr. Bell's team members, Jackie Domeyer. Jackie is the Assistant Director of Research and Medical Affairs, and she has extensive experience researching therapies for genetic disorders and believes strongly in the role patient health organizations play in guiding research and advocacy. So again, we're going to queue up this video and then we'll hear from Jackie. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome again to the National Psoriasis Foundation Volunteer Conference. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I wish we could be together in person, but even during this unprecedented time, we come together as a community. My name is Dr. Stacy Bell, and I am fortunate to serve as the Chief Scientific and Medical Officer at the NPF. One of the key roles in my position is to oversee our medical professional education. Today, we are also holding our 22nd annual residence meeting, a time when we bring healthcare providers together early in their career to learn about psoriatic disease from the world's experts. In my absence, it is my pleasure to introduce Jackie Dumeier, my partner at the research department at the NPF. Jackie will share with you information about our key research initiatives, those intended to meet the unmet needs of our community. Things like funding research to develop a diagnostic test for psoriatic arthritis, funding research to investigate mental health aspects of psoriatic disease, one of the top key morbidities and a key topic of discussion during this time. In addition, she'll tell you a little bit about the NPF research initiatives, where we're bringing the patient perspective to day-to-day research activities. Thank you again for joining us. Please know that our research department will always serve as a resource and a support for you all. Enjoy your day.
Hang on, Jackie, I'm getting your screens going here. There you go.
Is it sharing?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I am really happy to join you today, and I know Stacy, as you heard, is regretful that she wasn't able, to join today. But there's a lot of different activities that are going on this weekend, and so I'm excited to get to share some of these research updates with you. And I'm going to actually stop my video just in case there's some bandwidth problems. But this is just a kind of brief overview of our research and medical affairs team, because I really want everyone to understand that we really all work together to make sure that we are meeting these the goals of the strategic plan, and also including the patient voice in all of these efforts, and really trying to align some of the research efforts and the things that are learned from the research with also the education that we're providing to the providers, so they can start to implement that into their practices to really help improve the care of our psoriatic disease community. And so Randy and Chip spoke a little bit about the NPF strategic plan, and I just wanted to, kind of use that as a jumping off point, because the research is such a big part of that plan and really in meeting these goals. And so it's a lot of the metrics that are involved in meeting these goals. And, the big one is leading the collaborative transformational research, and we heard about that and some of the efforts from Chip, so the PSA diagnostic test grant, and then also that establishing that multi-institutional, multidisciplinary kind of research network. And that has since turned into the Psoriasis Prevention Initiative, which was the big research initiative that was launched last year. And we're hoping that a lot of these research efforts are going to increase the lifespan and health of individuals as we start to tease apart the things that are playing into psoriatic disease and trying to help prevent and find diagnostic tests for psoriatic arthritis. And so the PSA diagnostic test grant, just briefly, that was launched back in 2019, and we actually awarded 6 researchers with projects that were focused on developing this diagnostic test, and we've allowed them last year, and then also the rest of this year, due to some delays because of COVID-19, to kind of do these proof of concept awards. And so kind of investigating the best routes to go about developing this diagnostic test. And then, at the conclusion of this research year, they'll be presenting, plans for development of that test based on this proof of concept data. And then the other initiative was the Psoriasis Prevention Initiative. And, this is the one that, it's one of the biggest ones that the NPF has launched, and the biggest, financial commitment to psoriatic disease research. And again, the importance of really bringing a lot of the researchers in the psoriatic disease community together with a common goal. And because everyone has, different patient populations that may help move that research forward, different areas of expertise. And I'm sure all of you are aware, you know, a lot of the complicated parts of psoriatic disease and the things that go into that. And we'll be discussing that a bit as well, and how we're trying to lead research that's kind of bringing all those pieces together. And then the new one that we're launching this year is this More Than Skin Deep Mental Health. And so it's a grant opportunity for researchers to apply that are looking at the connection between mental health and psoriatic disease. And, you know, I think the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, really highlighted the importance of, you know, kind of looking into mental health research, and because we know that it has such an impact on, you know, quality of life. And so we're really excited to start launching this research initiative, and, you know, I'll go over a little bit of the research that's involved so far in looking at mental health and psoriatic disease. So to get into the meat of the research here, so there's a lot of different areas in psoriasis research. As we discussed, it's a complicated disorder with a lot of different components that people are researching. And you know, there's the genetic component, but, you know, that doesn't explain everything. And so then we start to look at the immune system and the role that the immune system plays in the disease. People are also looking into the microbiome and how, you know, the bacteria that's living on your skin and also in your gut, and the different bacteria that are in there might actually like affect the course of the disease or the severity of the disease. And then also environmental factors and how that, you know, triggers flares and, you know, maybe initiation of the disease as well. And then we have the comorbidities that come along with psoriatic disease and psoriatic arthritis, the increased risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, and then again, mental health. And, you know, all of this stuff kind of comes together to try to drive developing these, you know, targeted systemic therapies for the disease. So, you know, instead of, you know, taking things like methotrexate that really aren't targeted at specific, you know, systems in the disease, being able to develop things like biologics that are, you know, targeting a certain pathway in the immune system to try to, you know, prevent some of the side effects that come from these therapies that may, you know, act more globally throughout the body. And I like to think of, you know, the way that we're going about moving some of these initiatives forward and how researchers are looking at it as well is kind of like a puzzle. And so we have all of these different areas of research, and you can think about when you're putting together a puzzle, and say you have a 1,000-piece puzzle, and, you know, when you start off, you kind of start grouping things that are maybe similar in color together. And so as you start working on those, you may have, you know, parts of the puzzle put together in like 6 different areas. And then as you put more and more and more of those pieces together, you know, you start to be able to see how they fit. And then once you can see how they start fitting together, then you end up with, you know, this whole beautiful picture, you know, that makes sense. And so I like to think of these research efforts and, you know, how we're going about really investigating the disease, like putting a puzzle together. And while I don't have time to talk about all of these today, I would like to touch on a few of these that some of the NPF funded research is looking at. So one of these areas is the immune system. And you can see this is a puzzle in and of itself. Here, there's a lot of different cell types that are involved in the disease. And, you know, we know that the immune system has gone, you know, a little haywire in psoriatic disease, but, you know, how do we figure out which cells are involved, and how do we figure out what goes wrong, what is initiating the psoriatic disease? And, you know, there's advanced technology that's come about in the last couple of years that has really been able to kind of tease this stuff out and then be able to go about developing these targeted therapies that are acting on these certain cellular signaling that's going in specific cells that are involved in the immune system, involved in inflammation and propagating that inflammation throughout the body. And so we want to, you know, look at what is different in the cells in psoriasis versus the healthy immune system. And one of the ways to go about doing that is trying to look at, you know, the individual cells and looking at, you know, what's going wrong in there. Are there different levels of different, you know, signaling molecules that are, you know, leading to kind of this haywire immune system? And how this has kind of been done in the past is with something, called like bulk RNA sequencing. And I'll give you another analogy. I like analogies when explaining research. So, you can imagine that all of these immune cells in your body, are kind of different types of fruit. And so with the old sequencing technology that we had, it was pretty much like taking all this fruit and putting it into a blender, and then mixing it all up. And then taking that, fruit smoothie and then trying to tease apart, what types of flavors and smells are coming from which fruit. And, that's difficult to do when things are all blended together. But there's actually this new type of technology that's out that's called single cell sequencing. And so here, basically, you're kind of taking your fruit and you're cutting it up into a fruit salad. And you can look at each, individual cell or piece of fruit, and figure out the genes that are expressed or the different components of that cell that may be different from a healthy immune system. And so this is like really exciting technology, and they're finding ways to do this cheaper and cheaper, which has been kind of a barrier to this type of research in the past, and being able to do it in large samples, which is really what gives us the most information. So it's really exciting to see, this technology really taking off and being utilized in a lot of the research, especially that's going on in the PSA diagnostic test grant, and being able to do it on really large samples. So that really gives us the most information. And so then another piece of this, and there's been a lot of research over the years looking at different genes and trying to identify certain gene areas that are associated with psoriasis. And they do this in something that's called a genome-wide association study. And so again, they're taking DNA from psoriasis patients, and then healthy controls is what they call them, so they can compare, and they try to tease apart which genes or which kind of mutations and genes you see associated with psoriasis versus the healthy controls. And so currently there are actually 63 gene areas that are thought to be associated with psoriasis, and they're involved in a lot of different areas. Some of them are immune system, some of them are cell signaling pathways that actually take place in a lot of different cell types, and the heritability is thought to come from those genes areas that have been identified. But it's estimated that 50% of psoriasis is coming from a heritable gene. And so it's thought that there are more genes out there that we haven't identified as of yet. And so when we look at some of these techniques and these puzzle pieces, there's psoriatic arthritis as a comorbidity as well. And a lot of these same, puzzle pieces are being looked at in trying to understand, why some psoriasis patients go on to develop psoriatic arthritis, and what are the clinical and genetic risk factors for that. And then also trying to identify, triggers and what may cause that transition to occur. So again, there's this interplay between all of these different, puzzle pieces to identifying what is causing people to develop psoriatic arthritis. And so looking at the potential risk factors for developing psoriatic arthritis, some of these are known, and so it seems to be that scalp psoriasis and nail psoriasis tend to be seen more in patients that develop psoriatic arthritis. There's also other risk factors as far as this heritability genetic nature. So if you have a first-degree relative with psoriatic arthritis, if your psoriasis is more severe, obesity is a big factor in that as well. And then, we're starting to see some of these, what they call serum biomarkers. So they're able to, take a blood sample and then look at what may be different about these, kind of markers that are detectable in someone's blood in psoriatic arthritis patients versus people that don't develop those. But, a lot of this is, preliminary research, and trying to kind of put all these pieces together, it, again, is difficult. And so a lot of the current work now is trying to figure out ways to put these pieces together into a diagnostic test. And again, this is the initiative that the NPF is really backing here to try to drive this development of this test as fast as we can. So we can try to prevent that, irreparable joint damage that happens if you're not treated for psoriatic arthritis. And so one of the big questions is, not everyone that has psoriasis goes on to develop psoriatic arthritis. And so, it's estimated that about 30% of people with psoriasis go on to develop PSA. And so the big question is that transition is really poorly understood. And the big question is, can we predict which individuals will progress from psoriasis to psoriatic arthritis? And there's some interesting strategies that our researchers are employing to try to better define, why that transition is happening. So there's different phases of kind of this development of psoriatic arthritis in patients. And again, this isn't 100% because there are some people that have psoriatic arthritis that do not show signs of skin
Jackie?
psoriasis. But typically, you present that are, yes?
Jackie, you're
Yes.
breaking up a little bit. I don't know if your connection is fading, but every now and then you break up.
Okay, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully it will not do that again. But so we know that, there's people that develop psoriasis on their skin, and then there's a subset of those that are at increased risk of transitioning to psoriatic arthritis. And then, they have this kind of subclinical psoriatic arthritis, which means that it's not really detectable with the current technology that we have and the current knowledge that we have. And then there's an early stage where, it's right before, symptoms are developing, and then there's early PSA. Define what is different between these certain phases of psoriatic arthritis is one of the strategies that, people are employing. And, how they are able to do that is they can actually take longitudinal samples. And so we can have these clinical registries of patients that we can follow through their lifespan. And so you can actually collect samples from maybe when they present with cutaneous psoriasis or skin plaques only. And then you can also look at patients before they have developed psoriatic arthritis, and then after that they have developed psoriatic arthritis. And you can do things like sequencing, or you can look at the different levels of certain proteins in their immune cells. And if you can try to figure out if there's things that are different between either psoriasis, or if there's something different, between the PSA before or the PSA after, then that would be a way to kind of determine if that is something that we could use as a diagnostic test. Strategies that one of our researchers is looking at these kind of twin studies. And so you can take individual cells from psoriasis patients and look at the cellular components between, say, siblings that develop the disorder versus those that don't. And then the same thing with twins. So if you have identical twins and only one of them goes on to develop psoriatic arthritis, you can try to determine what things are different, because it's not genetics in that case, then it may be something about, again, the different proteins or transcripts that are in the different immune cells. And so this is a technology where that single cell sequencing, again, is really impactful here, because it's not something that we could different cells, like certain types of immune cells, and look at, you know, skin versus blood cells. And then we can use these computational techniques from computers to try to bring all that data, you know, together to try to determine, you know, which ones are more important and would be more likely to predict who goes on to develop psoriatic arthritis. And then one of the other things that we're looking at are different imaging techniques that are used. And this is actually a new type of higher powered PET-CT scanning that they're looking at trying to detect some of these early signs of PSA that aren't seen with the current imaging techniques, and looking at certain areas that might develop it first, like the fingers and some of the joints. And this is really exciting. It's a new technique, and they're actually using it in a couple of different and detecting it early enough, and hopefully we can start treating and really prevent that irreparable damage. And so really, again, it's putting all these puzzle pieces together, even for just the psoriatic arthritis piece. And you can see they can take the genetics, putting that together, looking at the different types of proteins that are expressed in cells, and putting that together with the clinical data that they know as far as high risk clinical signs, and as well as with these new imaging techniques, if we're able to look at that and bring that into the piece, and really use these high powered computational techniques to put all of that information, you know, together to develop, you know, the most accurate tests that we can. And so, again, another puzzle piece is comorbidities, is cardiovascular disease. And we hear about that comorbidity quite a bit. There's a lot of research that's been done in this area, and a lot of it is from Joel Gelfand and Nehal Mehta. And it's looking at, you know, inflammation and dyslipidemia and psoriasis, and how that's causing vascular inflammation, because we know that, you know, it's a systemic disease, so it's more than just the skin, and that we're actually seeing, you know, major cardiovascular events happening more in psoriatic disease patients. And then that's where we're seeing that kind of premature mortality, and, you know, it's estimated that that's kind of reducing the lifespan by 5 years in psoriatic disease patients. And recent research has actually shown that psoriatic disease patients actually develop more of these high-risk plaques. And so we, you know, can start to try to tease apart certain treatments that might be able to treat just those high-risk plaques to try to reduce the cardiovascular disease impact on lifespan. And then there's a new study actually that was just published by Nehal Mehta that's showing that biological treatment may actually prevent development of these high-risk plaques. And so if we can start, you know, identifying and getting people on biologic therapy to treat the systemic disease, that we might be able to, again, reduce these comorbidities. And then another area of research that some of our researchers are employing is also, we've started to figure out and tease apart these pieces. And then we're putting them together, but we also have to take that research and disseminate it out to the community. And there's research called implementation science. And so it's looking at ways to translate this knowledge, you know, into new practice behaviors. And that's, you know, a lot of the work that our, you know, medical affairs side is doing, and trying to make sure that this research is getting out to the providers and it's being incorporated into their practice. And, you know, there were new guidelines released on handling comorbidities, and, you know, really stressing the importance of screening in psoriatic disease patients before, you know, they start developing these cardiovascular events. And so there's a lot of research going on in that, especially in this cardiovascular disease space. And then the one last comorbidity I'll talk about is the mental health. And so, kind of filling this research gap, because it's really suggested that, the mental health needs of the psoriatic disease community are not properly addressed. And, there's a lot of different factors. So there's psychological factors that go along with psoriatic disease, and then the kind of this higher risk for mental health disorders or depression. And there's also the psychosocial impact on quality of life, and how that can affect social functioning or your work or school productivity. And then they've also started to link some of these biological factors with inflammation and cytokines with depression and psoriatic disease. And so people with depression, that may not present with some of these other autoimmune diseases, you actually see some of these same cytokines that are involved in autoimmune disease and psoriatic disease elevated in people that just have depression as well. So, there's kind of this interplay between factors in psoriatic disease with depression. And so trying to tease apart, those pieces is difficult, but we're trying to, again, foster research into that area because we want, to know the impact of, again, these cytokines that are involved in developing developing depression or mental health disorders. And this is just a slide kind of showing how that may, impact the inflammation in psoriasis may impact serotonin production in the brain, which may be, kind of leading to the increased risk of depression. And so lastly, I just want to talk about, again, the puzzle analogy and, how we really need to take all of these areas into account. And it's important to be doing research in all of these areas so we can eventually put all those puzzle pieces together and really come up with, a prevention and a cure for psoriatic disease. And so, looking at the different types of psoriasis and how they're different. And if we, can start to put that puzzle piece together and think about, how we can, prevent psoriasis from even happening in the first place. And then also the psoriatic arthritis piece, thinking about the genetic component and, all of the lab work that goes involved to, figuring out and answering these questions. And so in the interest of time, I will go through a couple of these other pieces really quickly, because I know that this is something that a lot of people are interested in right now. And I want to talk about the efforts that the NPF research team is doing, in the COVID-19 space, and then others as well. And there's actually quite a few psoriatic disease patient registries that are out there right now, trying to, again, tease apart, the impact that the disease has, and also the impact that psoriatic disease treatment has on either, getting infected with the virus, or also the disease course if you do end up contracting coronavirus. And again, these haven't been around a long time, so they're still trying to kind of collect all this data and make sure they have enough to really put all the pieces together in a good way with enough data that is really impactful. But there is some preliminary research out there that the findings suggest that the use of biologics is not really associated with worse COVID-19 outcomes. And all of this research that's coming out, it's really hard for everyone to be able to have access to it, and also to understand it. And so the NPF actually created this COVID-19 task force, and it's chaired by Joel Gelfand and Dr. Chris Richland. And so we're putting really experts in psoriatic disease, and also experts in other areas like infectious disease and pulmonology, and trying to bring all these people together to really guide the response of our community, both patients and providers. And so the COVID-19 task force actually recently released guidelines for management of patients with psoriatic disease during the pandemic. And those are on our website if you're interested in taking a look at those, as well as published in the journal from the American Academy of Dermatology. And this task force is going to be continuing to meet, and especially as we get closer to the development of vaccines for the disease, to try again to go through all that research and put recommendations out there for our community. Excuse me. And then there's some patient resources on our website too. So there's a COVID-19 resource center. If you haven't checked that out, that's a great place to go and get information. And there's going to be more information coming out as we again start to see more of the data come back from these registries. And so go check that out. There's a lot of podcasts already and webinars that our outreach team has put together, and it's a great source of information. And so I just want to talk about, really the future of psoriatic disease. And so there's been a lot of effort to try to bring in, different players and, sorry, that's my alarm, different players in the psoriatic disease space to try, to really drive research forward. And again, we're finding that these, collaborations between different groups is really pushing psoriatic disease research forward. And so there was actually a recent paper that was authored by Stacy Bell, our Chief Scientific and Medical Officer, and then also some of the other the groups. So there's patient groups, there's industry partners. We actually have some NIH, so the National Institute of Health partners, coming together to really drive some of these initiatives. And the NPF has the PPI, and there's the SORCAS initiative, and then there's one over in Europe called the Innovative Medicines Initiative. And so, this is really the future of research, and we're really excited about, bringing all of these people together to really have an impact on the patient community and really improving the quality of life for our patients. And with that, I will stop. And Matt, I don't know if I turn it back over to you. And I think I saw a lot of questions coming in. I will try to answer those as best as I can.
Yeah, Jackie, thank you very much for that presentation. And if everybody would give her some virtual applause there, we'd appreciate it. Questions are being compiled. So Jane, I believe it's you who are going to fire some of those in.
Actually, I do believe Bev and Audrey, and it looks like Leah has been answering some in the chat.
She has. She's been a chat room warrior.
I love it. So I'm going to leave it up to Bev, Audrey, and Leah to see what hasn't been answered yet.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Jackie, there are a few questions. One that has come in is, what are longitudinal samples?
Yeah, so basically that just means that you're able to take samples from one patient multiple times over their life. And so a lot of the times when we have, biobanks or, samples, you get, it's kind of like a snapshot of the disease. And so you may only get a sample from, when they first developed psoriasis or when they first developed psoriatic arthritis. And so it's hard to kind of compare when you don't have a sample from a patient, before they develop psoriatic arthritis and then after, to try to see what's different. And so, that's what, these longitudinal sample registries, which means, you're able to follow a patient along the course of their disease and, either taking clinical parameters and clinical histories or, actual biological samples.
Okay, and you had a slide that showed us inverse psoriasis. Someone's never heard of that. Can you explain what it is?
Well, one of our providers may be better able to do that, or Leah
Okay.
may be better. But it's generally looking at there's psoriasis that's in certain areas of the body. I know, like in skin folds and things like that, where they pop up. But Leah, I don't know if you have any other thing to add there.
Sorry, Jackie, I was trying to be good and stay off video and on mute, so I wasn't disrupting you. Yeah, thank you. I did put a link in the chat to our page on the website on inverse psoriasis. There are actually several different types of psoriasis, and most people are most familiar with plaque psoriasis. And inverse psoriasis is exactly as someone mentioned in the chat, psoriasis that occurs within skin folds. So it's actually probably more prominent than people realize. Somewhere in the range of 20 to 30% of individuals that have psoriasis will have inverse psoriasis at some point. On our website, you can find, we actually have a page with the different types of psoriasis. So if you're looking for a little bit more detail about the type of psoriasis you have or the types of psoriasis you have, I know in my case, I have a couple different types of psoriasis. So definitely check out the website. I've put some links in the chat, and as we're talking and sharing resources, if we have more printed information that's on our website, I'll keep populating the chat with those links so you can go read those details yourself.
Okay, and Jackie, here's another question. Is there any research being done with people of color with psoriasis?
Yes, and that's actually one of the big initiatives that the NPF is trying to make sure that we're including diversity in the research that's being done both on our end, and then also trying to promote that within the community. And there's been some partnerships with the Skin of Color Society to actually include patients with skin of color in some of the clinical trials that the NPF is involved in. And then we are also kind of including that as a charge in the request for applications for our grant program. So, actually including that's an important factor for trying to address some of the disparities that we see in healthcare in people of skin of color. So, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could just build on Jackie's answer there, this is an area that the NPF has been working in for a number of years, both on the research front as well as the department I used to lead, advocacy, on the advocacy front, trying to address access barriers for different segments, subpopulations of our community. Jackie didn't mention too much detail about the advisors that we work with, but we have a great group of medical board members and scientific advisory committee members who work closely with Jackie and Stacy and the rest of our research and medical programs team. And actually a new addition to our medical board just as of this summer is the immediate past president of the Skin of Color Society, who's already brought forward a number of projects he wants to work on within the medical board around this topic. So lots of great things that have been taking place, but also that we're looking to do, as Jackie said, going forward.
All right, and Jackie, I'm not sure if, I think this was on a slide that you had. We have a question coming in about the use of methotrexate versus a biologic. Are there research being done along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, methotrexate has been around for a while, and it's, it kind of works in, again, not this targeted fashion, like it works in a lot of different, areas of the immune system versus some of the biologics that, if it's an anti-IL-17 biologic, then it's actually only acting on trying to block that IL-17 pathway. And so, of course, like there always is research, and I didn't have time to get to this slide, but there's, a couple things in the pipeline right now that approval will probably happen in 2021 for two new biologics that will be available hopefully in the coming years. And so again, I think there's just this push to move more towards these targeted therapies because there's just less risk of side effects. They tend to have a longer durability, like patients can stay on them longer versus methotrexate. Sometimes there's some, again, systemic side effects that go along with that, and people have to go off of it. And there's a lot of research actually looking at ways to try to predict what therapy is going to be best for certain people. And so, looking at these genetic factors or looking at the, cellular components that certain people have, and that, if an IL-17 inhibitor may work better for them, versus an IL-23 or a TNF alpha inhibitor.
Great response. One last question. Is there any research being done on biologics and COVID-19 in terms of biologics affecting your immune system and making it more likely to contract the disease. And another point I have here, I sent out the link to our COVID-19 Resource Center, so I urge you to look there as well.
Yeah, so that's a great place to look, because it's really going to have the most up-to-date information, because that information is always changing. But, you know, as I mentioned, a lot of these registries are trying, the COVID-19 registries that are looking at, you know, both psoriatic disease patients, and then also people that are, you know, using, you know, these biologics, and trying to see if they're, you know, if they end up contracting COVID-19, if their disease course looks different, you know, than people that aren't on biologics. Again, they need to get more data to make sure that the results are factual. But as of now, you know, we have guidelines that were put out by our medical board as well. And, you know, it's recommended right now that you do not go off your biologic, because it's important to keep your disease under control, and there's no evidence currently that it increases your risk for contracting COVID-19. But again, the task force will be putting out, you know, new guidelines as more information is available. So the COVID-19 resource is definitely a great place to go on the regular to check if there's new things that are out there.
Well, Jackie, thank you once again. And thanks for Leah and Bev lobbing in those questions, and for all of you putting those great questions in the chat room. So that was really good work and good coordination. So the next step we're going to go to here, hold on, as the screen changed. My view changes here, bear with me a second. But obviously you can see from the slide, our next item on the agenda is perspectives on living with psoriatic disease. It will be presented by Josh Zelter, who's a volunteer, obviously, from the Chicago/Midwest region. I've had the great opportunity to meet Josh a couple years ago at a volunteer psoriasis event in Chicago. And he has quite a few accomplishments to his credit, including cycling more than 500 miles across the state of Iowa. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, but my teaser to his presentation is this. His story really is inspirational. So Josh, over to you, sir, and good to see you again.
Well, it's good to see you too, Matthew. Appreciate the introduction, and glad to see all the participants today taking part in something that I found extremely important for myself as somebody that has psoriatic disease. So as you can see on the screen there, yeah, there's a picture of me getting done with, just getting done with 500 miles or so across the state of Iowa. An event, maybe some of you are familiar with it, it's called RAGBRAI. And it was my first year doing it, and it was really exciting, and I'd always wanted to do it, but I think I was pushed a little bit more to get out and ride as an opportunity, not only to take care of myself after discovering that I had psoriasis, but also as a way to give back to the National Psoriasis Foundation. So a little background on my story. In 2012 is when I was officially diagnosed with having psoriasis. For those of you that are curious, I have plaque psoriasis and some inverse psoriasis as well. So that's been brought up a couple of times today. And it started with a couple of small splotches on my body, and I wasn't really sure what it was. So I'd gone to see my my internist, the general practitioner, and kind of curious about, you know, what was going on. And he wasn't sure, so he directed me to a dermatologist. Now, let's see, 2012, my math is bad, so I'm 42 now, so somewhere back in like my mid-30s, right? So about 34. So I'd never been to a dermatologist before, so this was kind of a new experience for me, and it's obviously something that I've learned to appreciate, not only with psoriasis, but when I went to meet the dermatologist about what we thought might be psoriasis, She had asked me if I'd ever had a full skin exam. Got fair skin, freckles and the like, and could be a good candidate for other skin potential issues. And so after a full body exam, actually, it was discovered that I had a melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer on my back. And so I like to say that psoriasis saved my life, actually, because it probably would have gone undiscovered to a point that might have been completely detrimental to my health and my life. So I have psoriasis to thank for that. Now, that doesn't mean that that I love living with psoriasis or anything along those lines, but what I think I discovered in the beginning that I didn't know was it was easy to get to a place of being disappointed, being depressed, and having those thoughts about something that was completely out of my control. And what I didn't get in the beginning from my dermatologist, and although I've stressed this a bunch to her since then, and things have changed within that office, is that there wasn't really any resources for me. I was kind of immediately shuffled off into worrying about skin cancer and not worrying about psoriasis. And I've heard comorbidities probably 50 times today. I didn't hear it once for the first several years that I knew that I had psoriasis. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know anything about it. And that's pretty scary when you're a new patient with psoriasis and you think that, oh, maybe it's just something related to my skin. Oh, maybe, it could be a joint issue if it's psoriatic arthritis. But not knowing that its potential effects on my cardiovascular system. Obviously the depression aspect of it. There's, the superficiality of having something on your skin that people point out in public places constantly about, oh, you must have got bitten by a lot of mosquitoes, or, oh, did you have a nasty fall, or, oh, you should try this lotion that I have. You've got really, really dry skin. And I think that's when I kind of drew a line in the sand and said, okay, there's something else I need to do here. And so what I was able to find was the National Psoriasis Foundation and the amazing resources that they were able to provide me so that I could learn a lot more about what I was living with, what it meant to, what was going to happen with my life and what I needed to do to take charge of that. But also meeting a lot of other people, as Matt mentioned, at a volunteer event with psoriatic disease and what it meant to them and how it's affected their life. And that was pretty powerful. And I, at that point, made it a point for myself as I was able to not only take care of myself because of the comorbidity concerns. So I got back into a more active lifestyle. I had always teetered with pre-hypertension, and there's also cholesterol issues in my family, let alone now that I've got psoriasis and have to worry about those things. So I got back into cycling, which was something that I'd always enjoyed doing, but didn't take quite as seriously. And I think over the last couple of years, I've cycled now somewhere around like 10,000 miles. Done that quite a bit in support of NPF, helping raise funds for all this great research and these resources that I think are really important for people to have access to. In addition to that, I mean, as a patient with psoriasis, I thought it was really critical too to be an advocate at the level of my dermatologist's office, saying, you need to have information here for people like me that come in that aren't coming in for, acne or whatever else may be the reason that you're in the dermatologist's office, but for people with psoriasis, so that they know that there's a place to turn to, that there's a place for them to get that information. And so starting several years ago, I guess now I'm probably in my third or fourth year, I guess maybe it's my fourth year of being a volunteer with the National Psoriasis Foundation. I made it a point to make that known to my healthcare providers, made it a point to try to take care of my body, and made a point to volunteer and help raise funds for the National Psoriasis Foundation to help everyone else out there like me that needs these resources and support these great researchers that are looking for ways to make our lives better, for us to hopefully have a longer, healthier life. And so that's kind of my story with the National Psoriasis Foundation. And so I think I've got a Team NPF Cycle jersey on there, so supporting that as I rode across Iowa. I've done that a couple of times now, and then unfortunately this year it was canceled. So I did the virtual NPF event. I did one that was in Virginia, I believe. I think it was in Virginia. And then I also did the one here in Chicago. But it was, unfortunately, it was such a nice day that I didn't actually do it virtually on a trainer. I actually went out and rode my bike like I like to do. I guess that's it. I don't know if anybody has questions about, my journey or, how to talk to healthcare providers, any of that. I mean, open to answer questions if there are any. Hey, Matt, you're muted.
User error, sorry. Josh, do you recall, what was it you wrote to the people who were following your first Iowa ride blog? What was it you told them on your last day? Do you recall?
It was pretty emotional. Yeah, no, I don't actually. I know I was pretty emotional when I made it to the end. I didn't think I'd be able to make it across. In that picture, you see the Mississippi River, so that's on the eastern side of Iowa. So you start on the Missouri River side. So you dip your your back tire in the Missouri River on the western side of Iowa, and you dip your front tire in the Mississippi River on the eastern side. And so that's me right there at the Mississippi River. I don't remember, Matt, what did I say? I mean,
this is great, guys, and it's a good life lesson. So this is what he wrote. He said, make a goal, aim high, go for it. It can be so damn rewarding. So high five to you, my man.
You got it.
We do have one question, and this is entirely up to you if you're comfortable. Do you mind sharing what you're currently doing besides, obviously, the physical activity helps, but to treat your psoriasis?
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. I'm on a cocktail of different types of skin applied medicine. So I use Taclonex for my scalp. I use halobetazole for some of the larger plaques that are on my skin. Some of the more sensitive areas, I use Desinide. I'm also on Otezla. I've been on that for probably about a year or so. And that's definitely helped kind of stabilize things and kind of keep things in check. But I do, like other people that are probably listening or participating, I've unfortunately started to experience some joint pain that's not necessarily related to me cycling. So a former medical advisor to NPF, who's absolutely wonderful, and because of NPF, I found out who he was, and it's Dr. Arthur Mandolin, and happens to be in Chicago. And actually have been in conversations with him, and we're going to take a little bit more of a deep dive into, am I starting to show signs of psoriatic arthritis? So right now, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't know, I don't have a whole lot of details. Getting in and out of hospitals and doctors' offices right now it's a little more tricky, but to get some of that stuff done. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it's just me getting older. And that's it. But as of now, I don't know. But the thing is that without NPF, I wouldn't have known those things to look for. And we get this great speaker before me talking about places on your body where you might have psoriasis that could be a precursor to psoriatic arthritis. And here I am going, I have scalp psoriasis. That doesn't mean that I have psoriatic arthritis, but it's just like one of those things. It's like, okay, here's a box to check. And those are, I think, really important for other people out there. It's just, there's so many resources and you can read so much stuff online, but I think NPF has really done a good job of aggregating that information and getting it so that you can look through it and be like, are these things I need to pay attention to? What do I need to do to take care of myself? And who can I turn to? And there's so many great resources on their website to do that. So.
Josh, that's great. And you know what? Good for you for being astute enough to kind of put those pieces together and being proactive to say, hey, maybe I should find out more about this and what's going on. And that's a great lesson for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. We can be the best advocates for our own health. So, and a lot of times it's up to us to kind of help the medical professionals get us pointed in the right direction. So listen, thank you so much for sharing your story. And again, and like I said, good to see you again. I hope
Good to see you too.
I can get to Chicago sometime.
Hey, you know what? We'll all be able to get back together soon enough. I'm fully confident in that. So, but thanks so much for inviting me, and thank you again for providing me help when I needed it. And keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you. And guys, you know, we just have a couple minutes until our next session, which will be pretty neat. It's going to be a Tai Chi lesson. So if you just want to stretch a little bit, we'll kick off at 1:15 Eastern, 10:15 on the Pacific Coast. But yeah, we'll just give a couple minutes here for you to stretch or grab a quick drink or what have you, okay?
There are not very many people.
Paula, can you see most of me?
Hey, Susan, this is Jane. I just wanted to let you know that when we get closer to when you're going to do, in just a minute or two, I will stop sharing.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, so I'll stop sharing in just a moment so that you can have full screen for your moves.
Okay, great. And I want to make sure that people can see most of me. It doesn't matter if they miss the top of my head or every toe, but I want them to see most of me. And Mo and I were practicing this. I need to tilt a little more. If I come close, it doesn't work. So I'm just going to speak from the back. Can you hear me okay?
You start to fade away. Can't hear you now.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Hey, it's Stephanie Gearhart in San Diego. How are you?
Hey, Steph, how are you?
Good. Hey, I jumped on late. Quick question. How do I, like when I want to type in and thank Josh for his part there, how do I do that?
It's kind of subject to your setup, but do you see a chat room?
Yeah, I do.
To the right? And
yeah, I've got it down below, but yeah, is that where I do it in the chat room?
Towards the bottom, yes.
Perfect. Okay,
And
thanks. I appreciate that.
there should be a category. You can either select individuals or everyone.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'll mute myself now so that Jane and all can get going on what they're doing.
Okay, great.
So Matt, it looks like we're about ready to start up, so I'm going to stop sharing so Susan will be able to share her camera full screen.
Susan, you with us? There she is.
Yeah, I'm here. Pardon me.
And if people want to be able to see Susan on her full screen in the upper right corner of Zoom, you have a little view, and if you switch it from gallery to speaker view, then Susan will be up there.
So Susan, if you speak,
Works.
there you go. All right, everybody, thanks for bearing with us there. It's time for me to introduce Susan Bach. And as I indicated earlier, she's going to give us a little Tai Chi session, right? We've had a lot of talk also about our mental health related to our disease. And this is a great way perhaps to approach it for some of us, especially who have joint considerations to think about. Susan's trained in tutoring people in the art of Tai Chi, and she's been doing so in the Portland area since 2010. She studied under Dr. Paul Lam of the Tai Chi Institute, and specifically practices a form of Tai Chi to help those who have mobility issues and are older in age. Specifically, she's taught Tai Chi for arthritis and fall prevention, as well as Tai Chi for diabetes. So Susan, I'm gonna hand off to you, and I'm gonna take my jacket off so I can do some Tai Chi with you.
All right. So you're going to switch the screen over to me.
Yes, we see you when you talk, so you're doing good.
Oh, okay. I can't see myself, which is which is not good. Which is okay. All right. As long as everybody can see me and can see me, pretty much all of me, I think we're good.
You're good.
Okay. All right. Let's get going, because I know we don't have a lot of time. Thank you all for sharing your break time with me to do a little Tai Chi movement this morning. We aren't going to actually do the moves in a form. We're going to do the moves that are preparation for a form, and we call them the warm-ups. They're basically foundation moves for Tai Chi stepping and Tai Chi, some of the Tai Chi hand moves. You know, I have to confess, I was a Tai Chi dropout years ago. I started doing Yang style Tai Chi when I was in my 50s, I guess. And then I had to stop out for a while, finally came back to the practice of Tai Chi for arthritis in 2009 when my husband started teaching it. And for me, it was perfect because at the time I had a knee with no meniscus. I tore it in my 20s, and the treatment protocol at that time was to take it out. So I was beginning to experience all of the limited mobility and discomfort of working bone on bone with no cushion in that knee. The Tai Chi kind of helped me get back up my feet, get back into a practice. And it also helped me prehab and rehab from full knee replacement when that happened 5 years ago. So it's been very beneficial for me personally. The form was developed by Dr. Paul Lam, who is now retired. He was a family practice doctor. He lives in Australia and travels all over the world during training sessions for folks like me who learn it and then provide instruction to those who are more local. And it's very fun. It's very fun. We call it playing Tai Chi at times. The form that I'm doing is based on Sun style Tai Chi, which is the youngest of the family forms, the 5 most common family forms. It's very upright in posture. There's not a lot of extension that gets you out of your balance comfort zone. So it's perfect for people with mobility issues and balance problems. And you notice I have a chair here. You may or may not be able to see it, but I have a hip that is now a little cranky. So if I need this, I'm gonna use it just to maintain my balance, and please do the same. You know, all Tai Chi is great for improving your flexibility, helping with your balance. It can improve your core strength, and it's also good for memory. because there are sequences that you learn, and some of the Tai Chi styles have long forms. So it can be a challenge sometimes. I don't want to dwell on that. Let's get going with a little practice. The warm-ups cover each of the major joint systems from head to toe. I often do them as a little warm-up Tai Chi set in the morning, just to kind of get things limbered up, because my joints are beginning to just feel the aging process in full force. So I'm trying to stave that off, and we'll work very slowly through them. The watchwords for any form of Tai Chi, and particularly for ours, are slow, smooth, and continuous movement, so that one move finish becomes the beginning of another movement, and it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. With the warm-ups, that's not the case. You can do them standing, you can do them with support, you can do them seated, but the most important thing is listen to your body and do not do anything beyond what your body says you can do. If your body starts to speak to you, listen to it and stop the motion, or back off and don't do as much. All right, are you ready? I think I saw a quick message up there about Qigong. The form of Tai Chi that I do also includes a very nice Qigong breathing movement. We aren't necessarily, well, we can do that. Let's just put hands up, head height, right in front kind of your chest, head width, and then take a breath and open them to shoulder width. Exhale, close back down. Inhale, release. One more. Good preparation. You may feel your palms warming up a little bit because we have two Tai Chi points that are facing each other. And if you need, for me, if I need to warm my hands up, if I just do a few of these, I can begin to feel the warmth as the Tai Chi starts moving a little more freely. All right, let us, I will say one more word about breath. Don't worry about how you breathe during these, just keep breathing. That's the important part. So, are you ready? We'll start with the neck and work our way down. And the neck movement is, it's a simple forward motion and left motion. So it's just forward and back. Now in Tai Chi, everything is related to your hands as well as your feet. So in this case, I'm going to follow my hands. I'm looking down. Hands are at my side. Let them come up just to below shoulder height. Turn the palms to face in and bring them in, and keep watching them because it will help your neck to turn. And then push out and down. I'm going to turn sideways. So it's up, in, push out, and down. And if you can think about moving this like moving through water, there's always kind of a slight resistance that we talk about in Tai Chi, so you're not just going freely, it's like moving against something that's pushing back just a little. Let's do that a couple more times. I'm going to stay forward, so it's up, in, out, and down. Now we're going to just go side to side, same idea. One hand comes up, palm facing forward, or facing the face. The other hand is resting, waiting, because it's going to have work to do in a minute. And I'm just going to follow that palm slowly to the side, back to center, and change hands when you reach the center point. Other side. It's important to notice that I'm keeping my shoulders very square to the camera. So all I'm turning is my neck and my head, of course. They are attached. All right, one more to either side. And then back to center. Okay, the next one everybody knows. It's a shoulder roll. So just do a few of these to loosen up. Do them forward and backwards. Okay, now I'm going to widen your stance a little bit and toe out a little bit. And we're going to gather a little chi. So it's up, and notice my arms are below my shoulders, and then I'm just going to fold in and down. And on this one, the idea is to take a breath in while you're gathering, and then release it. Let's do a couple more of these. Okay, we're going to move down now to sort of the internal stabilizers, things that keep your spine strong. And we're going to do a move that's called hold the ball. It's about basketball size, I would say, and it's directly in front, should be directly in front of your belly button. Okay, I am not going to move my arms at all from this point forward. All I'm going to do is rotate my torso just a little bit. And then I'm going to change hands. And I'm going to rotate back. And there's no extra movement of my hands and arms other than when they change from top to bottom. Now I want you to stop at the center. Look to see which arm is up. That should be the direction you go. Change. And now, in my case, the left arm is up, so I'm going to the left. Okay, coming back, I want you to hold the ball again. My arm is, my right hand is on top. I'm going to see a little bit from this angle. My top hand is just going to drop down. Bottom hand comes up and pushes. Heaven and earth. So pushing heaven and earth. And now just bring your hands back. Let the top hand fall through. Bottom hand comes up to push. And you might see me doing a little bit of up and down. I'm kind of going with the movement, so knees are bending a little bit of flex as I come down, straightening out a little bit as I come up. Most Tai Chi is done with a flexed knee rather than a knee that's locked in place. All right, let's move down to hips. And this is where it starts to get a little more interesting. And what I want you to do initially is stand with your feet hip width apart, weight equally distributed. And now I'd like you to move one foot. It's actually not possible. If your weight is equally distributed on both feet, you can't do that. In order to move a foot, you have to weight one foot and unweight the other. And then you can pick a foot up and move it. So we're going to start with weight transfers now in this next section as we work our way farther down. So the first move is simply, I'm putting all my weight on my right leg, and I'm going to extend my heel and my toe. Heel and toe. And of course, there are hand movements. But let's practice it on the other foot first. Heel, toe, heel, toe. Okay. Hand movements are opposites for balance mostly. So when my toe goes back, my arms are forward. When my heel is forward, that's my right hip acting up. If you saw me do a little catch step there. Now I want you to change feet. Make sure you're real good on your next foot, whichever one it may be. Doesn't matter if you do these on the same side that I do, as long as we hit both sides. Okay, All right. Now we're going to try a little stepping out. So I'm going to let's practice just going out. And now the weight transfer is going to happen every other step. So I'm going to transfer weight, step out. Weight, step out. Weight, step out. And this has one of the most, it's a hand movement that some people will have difficulty with. But I'm going to see if I can help you through it with a couple of hints. I want you to picture yourself in a very narrow hallway. And the right arm will come up and rotate out to push against the right wall. The left hand comes in. They're both facing the same way. Comes in midway between elbow and wrist, and it's pushing as well. So the way it matches up is I'm going to step to the left, push to the right. I'm going to come back to center, push to the left. Come back slowly to center, push to the right. Back to center, push to the left. All right, now for the really fun one. This is where we employ a punch, and we employ either a kick or a point. And you can choose your poison here, pick your poison depending on how stable you feel. And the idea here is not to do a swing, because that's not good for anything. So this is a knee warm-up. So the idea here is to come up, flex, unflex, flex, and come back down. And it's done slowly, which can be the tricky part. It doesn't matter how high you go. If it's easier, and we'll start with just touching down. The punch is, let's practice that. Let's practice it first just with a touch, then we'll do it an off the floor move. So I'm going to do up, touch, up, back. Flex that knee, point, up, back. Now try it once, just to see if you can manage it. And if you can't, just go back. If this is trickier than you want to get, just go back to the pointing. That's perfectly good, because the knee is getting the same exercise out of it. All right, for the punch, we make what we call ice cream cone fists. They rest at the hip, and when you move forward, the fist comes up, rotates over, and punches. And then you just recoil and come back. Up, rotate. Spiral movement like this is a big part of Tai Chi.
And Jane, it's Matt. Just to give you a heads up, we have about 4 minutes left in this segment, okay?
Okay, let's finish these and then we'll let you guys go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's try this. All right, that's enough of those. Now we're going to try a variation of that, and this is a weightless step. This is the last thing we'll try. We're going to just step forward, heel, foot flat, now do a weight transfer and a punch. And if you look at me from the side, you can see that when I step forward, foot flat, I'm not moving forward until I transfer weight. This is what puts momentum behind the punch and allows you to put some force into your move if you need to. It's not something we stress in Tai Chi, but Tai Chi is born out of the martial arts, and that's where some of this comes from. The very last thing I want you to do is to do an ankle flexibility, just heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. Change feet. And then do side to side. This is kind of the heart of your balance, so to speak. All right, I think we're done. The Tai Chi salute is very simple. Fingers together for community, thumb bent for humility, a very soft fist for strength. Shay Shay, everyone. Thank you so much.
Matt, you're muted.
Thank you, I know. Thank you very much, Susan. And hey, everybody, look, if obviously there's many community colleges and senior centers and clubs that offer these type of classes, if you have further interest. And actually in the chat room, one of our participants says she practices 6 times a day. So you can certainly find ways to do this on your own. So we're gonna shift gears a little bit now and move on to our next segment, which will be presented by Chris Bachmeyer, the NPF's Director of Field Operations. Chris has been with the foundation since 2014, and her talents have helped the NPF grow the multitude of ways that we conduct our fundraising efforts. Her role has never been more challenging than this year in trying to manage these field operations, obviously, while ensuring that everybody is safe from COVID. For those of you who don't know her, she is incredibly gregarious and always willing to smile and laugh. So I'm sure that will be shown in her demonstration here. Hi, Chris.
Hey.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Fantastic to see you, Matt, and everyone else. I kind of scrolled through just to see who I knew out there. So good to see all the smiling faces and hear everybody's voices and seeing you typing in the chat over there. So thank you very much. I'm coming to you from New York today. Flew in last night because we have a walk tomorrow. So just a quick thing, I don't always look like that picture, but that was me riding in DC for our virtual Raleigh cycle event, our very first virtual event of the year. So Jane, you can go ahead and move that screen. Many of you are familiar with, but if you are not, I just wanted to share with you all of the different special events that we have. And we start with Run, we have our Stamp Out Psoriatic Disease series, we have Walk, we have Cycle, we have our Commit to Cure galas, and we have our DIYs. So next. As Matt mentioned, you know, we did change quite a few things this year. We've added a few new events due to COVID, and they will remain with us. And then we've kept some of our old stuff as well. But new in 2020, we actually introduced our PSA Virtual Active Day. And I don't think Christian is on the phone or on the call here, but this is one of our volunteers in the LA area, Christian Jacoby, who helped us out on that day as well. And then I have a photo, we followed that up, that was in May. And then we followed up with PSO Virtual Active Day in August, and one of our volunteers in Portland, Oregon, participating in that. I was thinking when I was doing Tai Chi that with NPF this year, I have done yoga virtually, I have done Zumba virtually on PSO Virtual Active Day, and now I can add Tai Chi to my list of new exciting adventures with NPF in the last couple months. So thank you for bringing Tai Chi to us today. Go ahead, Jane, next one. So yesterday, you know, is kind of the pre-COVID. This is what our events look like. There's our Philadelphia Walk. We had a couple 250 people all gathered together walking. Napa Cycle, we had all of our cyclists together. Our Portland Stamp Out event, you can see we had, I think we had 189 people at that event. We had our Commit to Cure Gala in Seattle. Again, 300 plus people all gathered together for a nice cocktail hour before our event. And then the Austin Marathon, the half and 10K, and our group of runners there. And that was just in February of this year. So that's what it looked like for us last year. Go ahead, Jane. And today, this is what we looked like after March 14th, I think, is when we started. March 12th was our last live event until we just started back up recently. So in April, we kicked off our virtual events with our Team NPF cycle, and it started out in Raleigh, I'm sorry. April in Raleigh, and then we had quite a few of them in May. And then fast forward, we just held our first live event in Culpeper, Virginia last month on September 26th. So you can see where we had people joining us from all over. In fact, the writer that's featured there for April is from Texas. She joined us in Raleigh from Texas. And then in May, we had all of these folks for each of our events. People go out and ride, but we have a time when they can come in, check in with one another, talk before or after or during their ride. Some of those folks, you can see one up in the corner there or up in the middle there that's actually riding while he's talking. So, and then you can see Dr. Lebwall, who visited us as well. And then down at the bottom, you can see our riders in Culpeper. We've opened events back up where we can and when we can, and they are each in masks, even though they're outside. So practicing safe distances, but ready to ride. Go ahead and run. Today, again, we did February 2020. We were able to participate in the Austin Marathon. Our Chicago Marathon canceled. Our Marine Corps Marathon canceled. Our New York City Marathon canceled. And I know many of you guys on the phone or on the call here and on this meeting maybe didn't participate in each of these marathons, but some of you were out there volunteering. So unfortunately, our runs have been canceled this year after the February. Go ahead. And then today for walks. Again, walks are looking a little bit different than they did last year when we had 200 to 300 people at each of our events. And here's our virtual start in Chicago. You can see Dr. Lewitt and a number of other participants gather, and that is before we start our walk. So we all got on a call, chatted with each other, and then cut the ribbon and people were able to walk. But then we have our superhero in Chicago. She actually came out. We had a tent set up. People could come in, check in, pick up their bag, and go on their walk on them for themselves. And that was our, that's Dawn actually. And then, you know, our walks look a little bit different because we had a Sunday brunch for the New York walk this year. Up in the corner, one of our volunteers, Brenda, did a cooking lesson for us on that, and people were able to visit and talk and, you know, kind of a little pep rally to get ready for the New York walk that is taking place tomorrow. Down below, you'll see we did a pep rally, a virtual pep rally for the Philadelphia walk. So something new for us on that one. And then down in the, I guess it's left-hand corner, the giraffes are going to be actually visiting from the zoo tomorrow in your living room. So something that we've introduced this year, we do have people coming to the zoo tomorrow. They can check in, they can go for a walk in the zoo, but we can't gather like, again, we have in the past when we've had 300 people together. So if you do register for the New York walk, which you can do no matter where you live because we're all virtual now, you can actually have the giraffes come to your living room tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon actually. It's 3:30 Eastern time. So tomorrow afternoon, we will be streaming from the zoo with the giraffes. Next. Stamp out psoriatic disease now. They have all been virtual and will continue to be virtual through 2020. We are hoping that in 2021 we can start gathering again. But the great thing about it is we've been playing bingo online. So there you go. I-24 was the lucky number there. We've had great speakers. Dr. Siegel even was given an award during one of our programs. We've had our paddle raises. We've had online bidding. So we have been able to do everything we did in person and maybe a few other things virtually. It doesn't take the place of seeing everyone, but it certainly has been fun and a different way to be able to raise funds for everything we are doing. Go ahead, Jing. There you go. DIY. I think this is where a lot of you guys can come in, so I want to talk about it just a tad bit. As Josh mentioned, you know, he talked about the reason he does the Team NPF cycle and why he did his right across Iowa was to help us raise funds to do everything that we do. And I look at it as we are, you know, one piece of that third of the secure the resources necessary to achieve our goals. So we are in that fundraising and volunteers piece. Again, Team NPF and all of our special events are just a piece of those financial resources that we get, but it's a very important piece because it's really volunteer based. So that's where many of our volunteers are coming in. And we have many DIY events. And again, I know a few of you are on the phone that have, or on the call that have done the events. Jody did a candle one. Tammy Soretti does her February event with bingo and music and raffles every year. We have had game nights. We have had Hillel do swimming in the ocean. We've had goat yoga. We've done cooking. And I put in there the famous tipping the scales event. So this is where, you know, I call on you guys. And if you're interested, or if you have any of those fun ideas, if walk, run, cycle, or stamp out is not for you, if you can think about it, if you can think of it, we can do it and we can have fun doing it. So I put that there, of course. Any ideas are welcome. Next, I want to go over moving forward. So, you know, we had our last year, we have our this year. Moving forward, everything that we do is going to be a combination of in-person and virtually events for all events whenever possible. So we have had really good luck with our virtual events. So we don't see that changing. So even when we can begin meeting again, we will always have that virtual component. And
it's just something that is free, and you know, I was going to have it on if we were home.
The really cool part about it, it opens it up to absolutely everyone there. So I just added a couple photos, the Team NPF photo there with that couple with their masks on. That was from Chicago. Again, you can see our tent in Chicago at the Chicago Walk. A little bit different than it used to look. We had one table set up so people could come in and check up, but then check out the virtual call kicking off our events there. So fun stuff going on there. Go ahead, next, Jane. We do have our Commit to Cure Gala coming up on Saturday, December 5th in St. Louis. We are honoring Dr. Craig Leonardi. You know, we will be there in person. We will also be live streaming that event. So again, many people that can't attend an event can watch someone very deserving like Dr. Leonardi getting his Lifetime Achievement Award. Go ahead, Jane. Questions. If anybody has any questions or ever has any thoughts or any ideas of any fundraising events, contact me. I want to hear them. If we can do them, we will do them. I can help you do a DIY. Our team is out there, you know, all over the US waiting to help you. So I look forward to it. But I open it up to questions, Matt, if anyone has any.
Thanks so much, Chris. And guys, I did not see specific questions in the chat room for Chris. The staff, did you guys see any and I just missed them? I will take that as a no.
Sorry,
I haven't
Matt.
seen, yep.
Yeah, I didn't see any either.
Okay. So,
This is Leah. You're getting lots of love though in the chat.
oh
Everyone
yeah,
wants
Chris.
to say hi to you and misses you and is sending you hellos from across the country. So there are not
You were definitely
questions,
the
but a
chat
lot of
room
your
rock
friends
star.
are expressing their happiness in seeing you on the screen.
Well, I'm sure what they're going to do is they're showing me all that love now, and they're going to be sending me those emails of their ideas later on. So I look forward to hearing from absolutely everybody. It's been great. I can't say thank you enough for all of the support that many of you have given us throughout the last month. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. Jane, if we could move to the volunteer slide, there we go. So thank everybody. Obviously, Chris focused on many of the events that apply to our fundraising, but we have multiple ways that people can volunteer with the foundation that really cover a whole host of different interests, talents, and skills. They involve things from outreach, which is my personal love, to advocacy. So whatever you think you're good at, we can definitely use you, okay? So it goes just beyond the fundraising part. You'll see from that slide various ways. You can go to psoriasis.org/volunteer/ or email us at volunteer@psoriasis.org. And I'll kind of close this part by saying this. Here's what I always tell people. Do what you can, when you can, but most importantly, if you can, okay? We never want you to do anything that's going to be a detriment to your own health, either physically or mentally. So look, we're staying right on time here today. We have another segment coming up that we actually, if anybody likes, we can take a 4-minute break, and we can kick that segment off at 1:58 East Coast time. And if I've done my math work right, that would be 10:58 Pacific time. So again, 1:58 and 10:58, I'm going to move on to the next segment. So stretch, get a drink, do whatever it is you have to do, grab a snack, or you can keep making fun of Tammy in the chat room if you want. Thank you. Okay, guys, it's time to get back in motion. And something that we have yet to do today, and we'd be remiss not to do so, is to thank our sponsors, Eli Lilly and Sun Pharma. Thanks to their support, the NPF can continue to provide conferences to our community. Joining us today from Sun Pharmaceuticals is Meg McCoy, and she'll share information about Ilumya and resources available for patients. Welcome, Meg.
Meg, I think you're still muted.
Hi, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great, Meg. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Great. I'm glad to be here. I'm having trouble keeping a straight face because I'm reading the comments and just everything about virtual goat yoga, and it's really hard to follow. So just imagining everyone at home in their private area with a small baby goat trying to do yoga. Anyway, so my name is Meg McCoy, and I'm a registered nurse, but I'm also the Senior Manager of Patient Support Services here at Sun Pharma. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Ilumya and the additional patient services and support resources that go along with that. And Jake, thanks. Okay. So to start off, what is Ilumya? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science, some results, and also some safety and the dosing. So what Ilumya does and how it acts, it helps an overactive immune system, which is, as we know, the cause of psoriasis, and it gets it back into a specific rhythm. So it's a prescription medication, and it's used to treat adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who may benefit from taking injections, pills, any type of systemic therapy, or treatment using a UV light or phototherapy also. So what it does, Ilumya precisely targets the inflammatory pathway of the IL-23. And what that does is it normalizes the expression of inflammatory genes while helping to reduce that redness, that flaking, and that plaque thickness that patients can suffer with that you see on your skin. So I'm not going to dive into the full results. There's plenty of results in terms of the clinical trials, but I would want to just give, for those of you that are really numbers focused, some of our, our data. So clearer skin, Ilumya, with clearer skin, 6 out of 10 people were clear or almost clear after the first 2 doses. The first 2 doses occur in 4 weeks, and we did a touch point at week 12. And so that's really great data. 7 out of 10 people had much clearer skin after 7 months. 8 out of 10 people who had 75% clearer skin at 7 months were still clear after 1 year of treatment. And then 9 out of 10 people who had much clearer skin after 1 year still had clearer skin after 3 years of treatment. Okay. So the 3 adverse reactions that, and just to talk about some of the events that can occur, the adverse reactions that occurred more frequently than placebo, so greater than 1% in the clinical trials, were upper respiratory infection, injection site reaction, and diarrhea. So Ilumya also, to talk a little bit about the dosing, because this is something I know with biologics, especially now with COVID, let's talk about, what is the dosing? How often am I going to have to receive this medication? So Ilumya, it's an injection that's given by your healthcare provider in the office. And with Ilumya, you're going to receive 4 doses a year, and that's following our initial 2 doses. So after you see your initial 2 doses, you can plan on seeing your dermatologist every 12 weeks or about every 3 months. And this includes even when your skin does start to look better. So understanding safety, right, is Ilumya for you. It's not for everyone. And only you and your doctor can decide if Ilumya is the right medication for you. So you wouldn't want to take Ilumya if you're allergic to any of its ingredients. It may also lower your ability to fight infection, increase your risk of infection. Before this treatment, this is one of the biologics that your doctor, they're going to give you a tuberculosis test before you start on this medication. So I mentioned previously some of the more commonly seen side effects are upper respiratory infection. So that was 14% with Ilumya versus 12% with placebo. Injection site reaction, so at the injection site, 3% with Ilumya, 2% with placebo, and diarrhea. So it was 2% with Ilumya and 1% with placebo. Ilumya does have a low risk of infection. So in clinical studies, people who took Ilumya had the same low risk for serious infection as those who were given a placebo. Additionally, with Ilumya, there is no need for ongoing lab monitoring, which is nice. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Jane, thanks. Okay, so just talk a little bit about Ilumya support and starting your treatment journey with Ilumya. And there's two ways to do this. The first one is just ask your healthcare provider if they can enroll you. So whether you've just decided to start in Ilumya or you've already been on Ilumya, talk to your healthcare provider about the personalized support. There's some financial assistance from Sun Pharma. And this could include a lot of things. So personalized support with information about Ilumya, information sort of more broad spectrum about moderate to severe plaque psoriasis in general. We have lifestyle tips that can come via email. We have support via phone calls, text messages. We have support specifically for your prescription fulfillment, and this is just getting that prescription, through the journey of getting your insurance approval. Depending on eligibility, we also have access for patients to comprehensive financial assistance programs, and this can actually range from no cost to a very low cost out of pocket. Okay. The second way to activate your own Ilumya support is you can activate this on your own. So just grab your cell phone if you're not at your doctor's office, and you can text the word activate to 20808. You can also call our Ilumya support services team. The phone number for that is 855-4-Ilumya. And what services does this team offer? So there's insurance coverage questions, if you have any questions about your insurance, any questions about prior authorizations, appeals. Anyone who has lived in the biologic space knows that sometimes just getting the insurance approval, that can be a tricky process. So we definitely at Sun Pharma have support out there for you. Information about different types of financial insurance. In today's world especially, we have a lot of changes right now with insurance, with employment. Did you just age into Medicare? We can help work with your situation. Also, if there's been a claim denial or you need assist with your appeal, go ahead, give us a call. We have options. Jane, we can go to the next slide. Okay. And this is an important part, is that Ilumya is covered for patients not just with commercial insurance, but also with Medicare. So for commercial insurance, Ilumya is typically covered under the medical benefit. And in some instances, depending upon your insurance, there may actually be coverage under both medical and pharmacy benefit, but that's something you want to be sure that you understand what your coverage is and you understand both benefits and to ensure that your prescription approval happens, okay? And then for our Medicare recipients, and this is important, Ilumya is typically covered under Medicare Part B medical benefit. It's administered by a physician, and patients with Medicare may have little to no copayment for Ilumya. Jane, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so some of the financial assistance options that we have available right now for our different types of patients. So if a patient or a person has commercial insurance, the one program we have available to you is our Ilumya Early Access Program. And our Early Access Program is a program available to patients who they have commercial coverage, but until getting through that process of actually attaining that commercial coverage, this program, which you're automatically enrolled to, if the doctor has sent your prescription to Ilumya support, you'll be eligible and enrolled in this program, and you'll receive the medication for up to 2 years while your doctor is working towards that insurance approval. Once that happens, then for our commercial patients, we have a Ilumya copay program card, and this is a copay card that happens after an approval, and it can bring down your out-of-pocket expense or your copay to as little as $5 per dose, which is really great. So then let's take a look at people who at this time might not have any insurance. we have an Illumia PAP program, or a patient assistance program. And this is for patients who may not have enough coverage or don't have any coverage at all. Please go ahead and have your physician reach out to Illumia support. And we have a program available for you as well. Jane, thanks. We can go to the next slide. So updates to Medicare Part B coverage. I say this somewhat in a public service announcement point of view. So this is for anyone on the phone who might be on a biologic and it might be covered under their Medicare insurance. Please pay attention to this slide. So Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services announced changes to Medicare Part B coverage for biologics used to treat moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. So CMS recommended adding select biologics to the Medicare Part B self-administration drug known as SAD exclusion list. And I know that's a lot. I talked about sort of policy and government, and for those of you not too much involved with that, that makes no sense. So let me kind of put it in terms of how this relates to you. Certain biologics will no longer be covered through Medicare Part B. So the timing and the approval for this policy changes, and it varies depending upon the state, the MAC, who is the Medicare Contract Administrator. And the MAC final determination is going to be effective October 31st of this year. I say that with an asterisk because of COVID, that deadline has been changing over the course of time. So once this determination is made by your state MAC, patients whose biologic treatment is no longer covered through Medicare Part B will have 45 days to make a decision about how to proceed with their biologic therapy. So should the government extend the public health emergency, so COVID, the effective dates for these will, so they're going to change and shift. However, updates to the SAD list are imminent. Illumia will be the only IL-23 inhibitor that's going to stay covered under the Medicare Part B benefit with state MACs that implement the recommended CMS policy change. So I just want everyone, that's a mouthful. And if you don't live in the space, that can be overwhelming. This would be a slide that I encourage you to take a screen grab of. And anyone that does have Medicare, that's where their biologic is covered, reach out to your office staff or your dermatology. And always, nobody likes surprises. So just go ahead and ask, am I going to be impacted by this change? Thanks, Jane. We can go to the next slide. Okay. Stay connected with Illumia patient community. So the speakers before me touched on way more about some of the community resources available. I was cracking up about the baby goat yoga, which I think is fantastic, and I can't wait to become part of that. But we also, in terms of Illumia, we have an Illumia Facebook page, which is a great place to connect and be part of a community with other people that are taking Illumia or possibly thinking about taking Illumia. Sun Pharma, we are a proud sponsor of the National Psoriasis Foundation. You will always be able to find an Illumia booth at selected NPF, so our Stamp Out Bingo event, NPF team walks across the country. And also, if you want to learn a little bit more about Illumia or hear about any resources for patients, you can also listen to Sun Pharma's sponsored episode of part of the Sound Bites podcast. I just did a podcast actually last week with a patient, very fun experience. I think both the two of us probably enjoyed it more than we should. Just really nice experience, and it was very well run. So the podcasts are kind of a fun and a great way to join part of that psoriasis community. So you can check it out, and there's the link. So it's episode 82. Thanks, Jane. So I'm going to pause there if there's any questions. Jane, I'm going to have you just advance through the next 5 slides. As part of our disclaimer, the next 5 slides are important safety information, which is also available on the website at illumia.com.
Hi, Meg. This is Bev. We do have some questions for. Hi.
So soon.
Yes. We just recorded a podcast with Meg last Friday. So stay tuned for her podcast at the end of the month. So questions that came in, how long has Illumia been around? Is there an opportunity for home injections versus office auto injector?
So as part of our label, our medication is healthcare administered. So our medication is given by your healthcare provider in the office. We are not a self-injectable drug. And Ilumya is launched in September of 2018.
And another question, I've failed another IL-23. Is Ilumya still appropriate for me?
Excellent question. For that, I'm not the best person to answer that question specifically for you, as much as I want to, because I don't have your full medical chart and your full medical history in front of me. Reach out to your physician and have that conversation with them. Ilumya might be right for you. For not knowing the reasons that you failed the other medication, but definitely with any medication, right? And one thing about questions, and this is always important, we do this, and it's not just with Ilumya or psoriasis. We always remember the questions at the worst time, right? We're in the car, we're at the checkout line in the grocery store, we're watching TV at night, and something sparks our memory. Start to keep like a yellow pad list of questions, because we all do it, right? We get to our doctor, we sit down, they finish the exam, and they go, so any questions? And we go absolutely blank, and no, we're all guilty of it. So I'm a big fan of, whenever you think of a question, just add it to the list. It might not be so urgent that you have to reach out to your doctor that day, but at least the next time you go to the office and, she asks you, so do you have questions? You do, and you could just look at your pad and say, I do actually have some questions. And that's a great conversation to have with your provider.
And another question, any plans to release Ilumya for psoriatic arthritis?
So at this point, our only indication is plaque psoriasis, but there are further studies being done currently.
Okay, and I believe that's all of the questions we have. Someone is acknowledging, though, thank you for indicating the change with Medicare and biologics. They weren't aware of that change, so thank you for sharing that information today.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me today. This is a really fun group, so I'm glad to be here.
Matt, you're on mute.
All right. Thanks, Jane. Back to you, Matt.
Sorry, guys. Thank you, Bev, and especially thanks to you, Meg. And also what you might not have seen in there is Sun Pharma and Eli Lilly were getting a lot of love and thanks in the chat room. So again, thank you for your sponsorship. So guys, Jane is going to throw up a poll. And again, you can take a break if you want. The next segment, we're going to kick off in 3 minutes. Well, I guess it's 2 minutes now. Since we had some breaks, I let that run a little bit longer. And we'll be going into a physician-led presentation regarding psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So I know you won't want to miss that. Jane, do you want to talk about the poll?
Sure. So we thought it'd be best to start off the next presentation with Dr. Gilbertson and Dr. Siegel with hopefully a little bit of information from everybody that's here. So I'm launching a poll that is asking, have you been diagnosed? And you get one of 4 choices. And boy, people are already answering, so go at it. Wow, look at those answers come in. So far, we got about 65% people have voted. So I'll leave it open for just a few minutes more, seconds more, I should say, maybe. Oh, we got 77%. We've almost got 100% people. Come on, let's see what we can do here. All right, looks like we've just about topped out at 80% of everyone voting. So in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to end it. And we'll share the results and see what we've got. So Dr. Siegel and Dr. Gilbertson, if you are on the screen, you'll be able to see the proportion of what people have been diagnosed with that are attending.
Wow, that's interesting because that the both is higher than the statistics would typically indicate. But anyway, I'll let the physicians discuss that. So, all right, guys, I've already kind of flagged you that we'll be going to be having a medical presentation now. And we will have two physicians. First, a dermatologist speaking for the first half, and then a rheumatologist for the second half. And again, keep firing those questions into the chat room, and we'll keep compiling them and getting them asked during the Q&A session. Our first presenter is Dr. Eric Gilbertson, who's a board-certified dermatologist and is with Scripps Clinic Rancho in San Diego, La Mesa, California, and is also assistant clinical professor of dermatology at University of California in San Diego. He is a professional member of the National Psoriasis Foundation and was awarded a Health Professional Volunteer of the Year award by the foundation in 2018 due to his commitment in serving our community. The second presenter, Dr. Evan Siegel, is a rheumatologist with Arthritis and Rheumatism Associates in Rockville, Maryland, specializing in psoriatic arthritis and other spondyloarthropathies. Sorry, I knew I was going to bugger that word up. He is clinical assistant professor of medicine at Georgetown University School of Medicine and also serves as a special clinical consultant to the NIH, which you may have heard a little bit about this year. He is also on the NPF's medical board. Due to his many achievements in support of our cause, he is the first recipient of the NPF's Outstanding Physician Clinician Rheumatology Award last year. So with that, I will hand the floor over to the doctors. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right, can everybody see me and hear me?
I can definitely see and hear you, sir.
Perfect. All right. This is like my second Zoom meeting ever, so I'll just gotta bear with me a little bit. I think in this new environment with this Zoom meeting, we'll just try to go through this information, and we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards. We'll try to keep this pretty casual. Thank you all for joining us today. I think people are coming from all over the country. I'm in San Diego. It's another beautiful day here, 80 degrees. What we'll talk about today, if Jane can advance the slides. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about treatment guidelines in terms of optimizing care in response to treatment, what's currently available and what's coming down the pipeline. I want to reference, first of all, there's a lot of new information that's coming out very frequently, even especially with this COVID crisis that's going on and how it affects our patients with psoriasis. So the NPF website is great, and all of my patients who come and see me, they have to get a brochure or a magazine, and they have to sign up for a membership. That's kind of this almost mandatory thing in my office, that they come back and they tell me that they joined the NPF, because it's a great source of information, not just about the disease, but how to talk to your partner about the disease or how to fight with your insurance company. So there are all of these different treatment guidelines that are available for patients, but also for their providers. And so this is a real valuable resource. A couple of things we'll probably talk a little bit more about are comorbidities in psoriasis, and what's the role of these biologic agents in addressing comorbidities. In terms of pediatric patients, it's exciting. We have 3 drugs now that are approved for pediatric patients, and I have 1 or 2 patients who have done amazing in very young kids. And then I think with the concern about immunosuppression and systemic therapy, there probably has been a resurgence in alternative and homeopathic treatment options for psoriasis, and there's a great link on the NPF with information about that. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So what we are hoping that we'll share with you guys today is what treatments are available, what treatments are shown to be effective, and what are their new variation or tweaks on the medications that are around for some time. Also, that every patient is different. And so it's not that everybody in my office gets a Lumia or Skyrizi or whatever. It really depends a lot upon that discussion one-on-one with your provider in terms of, do you have any comorbidities? You know, are you a young woman who could become pregnant, or are you a healthcare provider who is in a high-risk environment and may have potential COVID exposure frequently? So I think those are important. I think also the focus really is on understanding that patients with psoriasis have a much higher incidence of other health issues, you know, diabetes, high blood pressure, et cetera. So in my office, it's pretty much mandatory that you have a primary care doctor in addition to seeing me. And there's some of the primary care doctors that I work with very frequently, just to make sure that the patient has had their blood pressure, cholesterol, you know, blood sugar, that kind of stuff checked. And also that's a great resource for me in terms of, you know, I'd like to make sure all my patients are up to date with their vaccines, and having a primary doctor is helpful in that regard. And also if the patient were to become ill or develop bronchitis, pneumonia, they're on a biologic, they already have a established relationship with a primary care doctor. So we encourage that a lot with my patients. And I also think it's important that, you know, this decision is not made unilaterally. I mean, there's a bunch of different factors that go in terms of, you know, deciding what medicine that we might consider and then narrowing down that list. And I think also we have to have the patient do some research and take some responsibility as well. You know, if the, if we decide agent X and agent Y are both roughly equally equivalent, and we might submit that to the insurance company, and agent X is $10 a month and agent Y is $1,000 a month, you know, we want to work with the patient and work with their insurance and not just say, okay, it has to be agent Y or nothing. And so we try to be flexible, and, you know, our nurses spend a long time on the phone talking to insurance companies and trying to work through some of the details. I think for many of our patients, the NPF Patient Navigation Center has been very helpful as another source of information with patients who are having trouble getting their biologics covered or helping with appeals, et cetera. So pretty much all of our patients who we are submitting an application for a biologic, or we were anticipating there might be trouble, they're given the information to contact the Patient Navigation Center. Okay. Next slide. So, you know, COVID came as a pretty big surprise to most of us. And when it first came out and it was bad, I think in my office and many of my colleagues kind of just put a hold on patients on biologics until we understood better exactly what was going on and what the risk factors were. So I think for the first few weeks, most of my patients on biologics, we just held it until we understood a little bit better about, you know, does being on a biologic agent increase your risk of developing COVID infection? What do you do if you are on a biologic agent and you are exposed to, or you actually develop a COVID infection? And so there's been a lot of research and a lot of literature about this. And I think the fundamental thing, and I think what rheumatology will discuss as well, is that if you're on a biologic agent and that biologic agent is working well and you're not having any significant issues, it's probably more prudent to keep taking that biologic agent. Because if you stop your biologic agent and your psoriasis flares up tremendously and your arthritis flares up, then that may decrease your ability, you know, to deal with a COVID exposure. I think part of the problem as well is that, you know, patients with psoriasis frequently have other comorbidities. You know, they might be a little bit older, they might also have diabetes, or they might have hypertension, or they might have some breathing issues. And so the diagnosis of psoriasis by itself is not going to predispose you to get a worse COVID infection or get COVID more likely, but it's the fact that people with psoriasis have a lot of these other comorbidities that probably that general population is a little bit increased. What we've done in my office is that if a patient is on an older biologic, so let's say they're on Enbrel or Humira, and it really is not working great, this is a perfect time to switch them to something else. I mean, I think the general feeling is the TNF inhibitors probably have the highest incidence of pulmonary infections, such as reactivation of TB, in comparison to the newer IL-17 and 23s. What's not clear is just because the TNF inhibitors may increase your risk of reactivation of TB, does that increase your risk of COVID? And I think that's unclear. But I think the general consensus is that if what you're on is working, then stay on it with the appropriate precautions. If it's not working, great time to switch to something else. I do think that, again, the NPF has lots of guidelines which are very helpful, as well as the American Academy of Dermatology has guidelines as well. The one thing I will say in regards to COVID and systemic medications is I think my highest risk group are older people who are on some of the older oral therapies, such as those patients who are on cyclosporin and Cellcept. I think that their risk of COVID is definitely increased. And so in some of my older patients who are still on Cellcept or cyclosporin for whatever reason, for bad psoriasis or bad eczema, et cetera, I think that small subset of populations, we're really pushing them to something else, because we do know that those agents do significantly risk of COVID. In terms of methotrexate, I'll defer to my rheumatology colleagues in terms of what they're telling their patients, but I think basically is if you're on methotrexate and it's working great, then keep taking it, but if not, it might be time to consider something else. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. In terms of latest treatment developments, so I think, we all know that there's all these like 200 different topical steroids, which are categorized into different potencies, and they come as creams and ointments. There also are, in the past, non-steroid based preparations. Some of those are over the counter, and some of those are prescription with vitamin D bases to them, or tar based or salicylic acid based. Some of the things that are new in terms of topical therapy, and for some patients where they don't have an extensive amount of psoriasis and they don't have psoriatic arthritis, you probably don't need to be on a systemic agent, is combining agents together. So calcipotriene combined with betamethasone, which is also known as, Wynzora. We've also used it in the US as Taclonex. There's another new product that's out, which is called Duobri, and what that does is it combines tazarotene, which is a topical retinoid, which is effective for psoriasis, but can be very irritating, combined together with a topical steroid. So that's something else that's new. So perhaps with some of these combination agents, you could maybe use something like this every day for 30 days and then take a break instead of having to use it more intermittently. The other thing is, we've always been looking in psoriasis for steroid-based topical agents, especially for application in more sensitive areas like the face and the groin. So we've had some overlap with some agents from the eczema treatment community, such as tacrolimus ointment, pimecrolimus ointment. In terms of specifically addressing topicals for psoriasis, we know, for example, there's this new cream which is called Relifimast. Basically, it's a phosphodiesterase inhibitor. So it's kind of like a cream form of Otezla that's coming out. There also is this whole new group of aryl hydrocarbon receptor inhibitors, which is a different mechanism of action than any topical cream that's been out there before, that inhibits cytokine production in the skin. I don't think that's clinically available yet, but that's coming. So, what we're always looking for are topical agents that are safe, effective, and don't have some of those side effects that we see with chronic topical steroid use, such as thinning of the skin and systemic absorption. We can go to the next slide. So there are a lot of new agents, and there's a lot of new agents coming out pretty much all the time. And I think we're aware of the IL-17 and the IL-23s. And I think as we learn more about psoriasis and this inflammatory cascade, I think the focus of therapies are drugs that are very specific in that cascade, and they're suppressing a small part of that, which really has to do with the inflammation in psoriasis, and hopefully not causing widespread suppression of the immune system. So older agents, like mycophenolic acid and cyclosporin, kind of suppress the immune system in general. So as we move forward with our understanding of the disease, we're getting fancier and fancier medications, which are hopefully really just focusing on the part of psoriasis, and therefore hopefully not suppressing too many other things in the system. The other goal obviously is to find something which is safe, low side effect profile, doesn't require lots of lab monitoring, and obviously anything oral is probably easier than most injectable agents. So in that regard, tyrosine kinase inhibitors, there's a new one that's coming out, which is called deucravacitinib, which inhibits cytokine production by its effect on this molecule. And again, PASI scores are relatively good, and this is available orally. This has not been released yet. There are two new biologics coming down the pipeline, but there's a ton of biologics coming down the pipeline. There's one which is a IL-17 inhibitor, which is blocking subunits 17A and 17F. This is called mezigdomide. And then there's another new biologic agent coming out, which blocks specifically not just IL-23, but that submolecule, the 23p19. We can go to the next slide. So I think, when a new patient comes in and they have significant psoriasis and they've been dealing with it for a long time, we examine them, we talk, we figure out what other health issues they have, what are their comorbidities, do they live far away, are they afraid of needles, do they work in healthcare and have a lot of COVID exposure possibly at work. So we have to kind of put all that together. We also need to figure out what their goals are. If they, have terrible joint disease and they're not so worried about their skin, or if their focus is they really want to clear up the psoriasis on their face and groin and they're not so worried about the plaques on their back. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. The other thing is that some patients may respond great to one biologic and another person may not. And, we still don't have that prediction of being able to do that. At some point, maybe in the future, we could do a skin biopsy and then test it with a little IL-17 or 23 in a lab and see who's going to respond best to which agent. But we don't have that at this point. So it's just kind of making an educated guess, and hopefully that agent will work. And if not, we just go on to something else. The other thing is I encourage my patients to be, informed as much as they can about what their options are, to bring questions, to send questions. But then also be available to assist in terms of, these are the 3 biologics we're recommending. Can you find out from your insurance company, if they have a preferred agent? Because, for us, it's difficult because everybody's insurance is different. They have different things on their panels, et cetera, because then it makes it easier if we can try narrowing down the search. But let me see, I don't know if there's another slide after this.
Nope, that's the last one for you, Dr. Gilbertson.
All right. So hopefully that's a kind of abbreviated review of what's going on out there and what's new. I think the production of biologic agents, and when I was a resident 100 years ago, there was very little bit of talk of this, and now it seems like there's a new biologic every couple of months.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Gilbertson, and I promise you there's a lot of questions coming your way at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Dr. Siegel, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you, and it's all yours.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. And again, I want to thank the National Psoriasis Foundation for putting this together and inviting me to speak today on really one of my favorite topics to speak about. I really want to add my my voice to that of Dr. Gilbertson and so many others here about how important the NPF is and what an amazing resource it is for my patients. I also refer people multiple times a day to the National Psoriasis Foundation for a variety of different things. I hand out pamphlets on psoriatic arthritis. There's a great one on psoriatic arthritis itself, on psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. There's another great one on all the various different medications that are available. All that information is on the website. And more recently, I've been pointing people to the podcasts that are available on the website as well. Which people have truly been enjoying on so many different topics. So anyway, let's get started. these are some of the things we're going to talk about today, some things you should know about psoriatic arthritis. And obviously, we don't have enough time to really get into this in depth, but I do want to do a little bit of level setting first, and then we'll get down to what's coming down the pipeline for psoriatic arthritis. A very exciting time for the treatment of psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis, of course. I was pleased to see that there are so many people with psoriatic arthritis on this call. Yes, I think it was mentioned earlier that, in fact, maybe there's even more than we would expect, perhaps because psoriatic arthritis is somewhat misunderstood for many people, and I'm glad to see people are here to learn a little bit about it. In general, about 30% of people with psoriasis will develop psoriatic arthritis at some point in the course of their disease. It looked like we had about 55% of the people who signed on having psoriatic arthritis. So what is psoriatic arthritis? It's an inflammatory arthritis with diverse clinical features, and that's what makes it so interesting and also so tricky, and really why we see so much underdiagnosis of psoriatic arthritis. Psoriatic arthritis can show up in so many different ways, as I will show you. Chronic tendinitis, even things as that you wouldn't expect, like inflammation of the eye, or bowel inflammation can be associated. All these things are often things that people don't really realize that they should bring up to their dermatologist. They think they're there really for their skin. But in fact, again, usually within the first 9 to 10 years of developing psoriasis, 30% of people can develop psoriatic arthritis. And if they don't mention these things to their dermatologist, then it often will go undiagnosed. And we now know from a very elegant study that was done in community dermatology offices that about 15% of patients with psoriasis are completely unaware that they have already developed psoriatic arthritis. So we confirmed that 30% number, 30% have it, but 15% of total patients coming through their dermatologist's office often already have symptoms. And what can those symptoms be? I'll get to that in just a moment. We have been challenged by the lack of a true diagnostic test for psoriatic arthritis. So there is no blood test that makes the diagnosis. It is a clinical diagnosis. You need to meet a certain number of criteria. If you're going into a clinical trial, we use something called the CASPAR criteria to make the diagnosis, including psoriasis, but also a number of other musculoskeletal issues and the presence of nail disease. The NPF has a major initiative going on now that is meant to try to develop a diagnostic test for psoriatic arthritis, a blood test, a biopsy, something that will help us to make that diagnosis earlier. Why do we want to make that diagnosis earlier? Because early effective treatment is critical to minimize poor outcomes. In fact, we have studies to show that even a 6-month delay in diagnosis is associated with increased disability 20 years later, increased erosions and damage to the joints that is irreversible, even much shorter down the line. We are lucky, as I have said, this is a time of revolution in the therapy for psoriatic arthritis. When I first went into practice in 1989, we pretty much had methotrexate, and that was about it. Now, starting in the late 1990s and throughout the 2000s, we have had an explosion of new therapies, and along with that, a really better understanding of the disease process so that we can continue to develop newer therapies, and they are coming down the road very, very rapidly, as Dr. Gilbertson mentioned. Another thing that's new in thinking about psoriatic arthritis is that we have talked a lot about coordination of care, that patients should be treated by a team if you have psoriatic arthritis, because there are skin manifestations, there are joint manifestations, there may be cardiovascular manifestations, there may be GI manifestations. The primary care doctor, and especially a coordinated team of dermatologists and rheumatologists, should be involved in the care, and those two docs should be discussing the case, if at all possible, on a fairly regular basis. I've been part of a group called PAC-MAN, which is trying to promote coordinated care through combined clinics where both a dermatologist and a rheumatologist will see patients together. Another thing, and I'll show you some data on this in just a moment, is talking about tight control. So we want to treat to target. There is a difference if you are measuring disease activity, measuring the number of swollen tender joints, measuring the number of tender areas, measuring the amount of skin that's involved, and changing therapy if it's not meeting a specific target. You know that the National Psoriasis Foundation has put forth a goal for psoriasis of 1% body surface area. 1% is the amount of psoriasis that you could cover with one palm. And that anything more than that, again, is not tight control. With psoriatic arthritis, we have a number of other measures that we use to think about all the different areas that can be involved in psoriatic arthritis. Let's go to the next slide. Great. So when we talk about the different areas involved in psoriatic arthritis, we talk about domains. In each domain is as important as the other. And so when I say that a lot of people don't realize they have psoriatic arthritis, they may have involvement in one of these domains without even realizing that it's associated with their psoriasis. So the first thing that especially rheumatologists think about is joint pain and joint swelling and arthritis. Is usually an asymmetric arthritis. So you might have a wrist on one side, but not on the other. You might have a finger joint that's involved on one side, but not the other. You might have one knee, but not the other. Very different than rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very symmetric disorder. So if one knee is involved, then the other one is usually involved. Enthesitis is something that's very prominent and often an early sign of psoriatic arthritis. Enthesitis means inflammation at the point where a tendon or ligament attaches to bone. The most common areas are at the elbow, so tennis elbow. Many of you out there may have suffered with that, or the picture here, Achilles tendonitis. Very, very common for me to have someone coming into the office who's been treated by a podiatrist for 6 months. The Achilles tendonitis or the plantar fasciitis is not getting better, but nobody ever asked them, gee, do you have psoriasis? Maybe this is part of psoriatic arthritis. So the most common areas, again, are the elbow, the plantar fascia, the Achilles tendon, and sometimes the tendons around the knee. There's another problem called dactylitis. This is commonly called a sausage digit. And we now know that that is intense inflammation of multiple structures within one finger or toe. So the entire finger or toe swells. And we now know that that's because the joint is swollen, the enthesis is swollen where the tendon attaches to bone. The tendon itself is swollen with tendonitis, and sometimes the bone is even inflamed. And that can be a really rapidly progressive problem. So dactylitis is something we need to treat aggressively because it can cause erosion and destruction of the joint and the bone very, very rapidly. One thing that often gets missed, and of course, by the way, you see right in the top right corner, the skin, of course, and rheumatologists up until now sometimes, have really not paid enough attention to the amount of distress that people have when the skin is very inflamed. They're so focused on the joints, but with this coordination of care, we're really trying to bring together a much better awareness amongst the rheumatology community about how important it is to get the skin under control as well. But the hidden problem is often something called spondylitis, and that is inflammation and arthritis within the spine. Spondylitis means inflammation of the spine. This is associated with symptoms of inflammatory back pain. Inflammatory back pain is very different than mechanical back pain. About 90 to 95% of the population will have mechanical back pain at some time in their life. Mechanical back pain is when you bend over to pick up that big heavy carton and boom, your back is out of commission first thing you want to do is lie down, rest it. It's going to feel a little bit better with rest. Comes on acutely and slowly goes away over time. Rest makes it better. Inflammatory back pain is very different. It comes on insidiously or slowly. It often occurs in people under the age of 40 years old initially. And the key thing is that it is better with activity and worse with rest. So if you have inflammatory back pain and you lie down, you don't necessarily feel better. In fact, when you get up, you feel worse. There tends to be a lot of morning stiffness when you first get up, lasting as much as an hour before it actually quiets down. So what rheumatologists try to do is separate out that mechanical back pain, which of course people with psoriasis can have as well, versus the inflammatory back pain. So that's why this is so tricky, that each of these things could be going on in someone with psoriasis, but the key is for us to get that word out to patients with psoriasis that yes, this could be associated with your psoriasis, and yes, you should talk to your dermatologist about it, and yes, your dermatologist should do a rheumatologist to really get treatment going as soon as possible. Let's go to the next slide. So what do we have to treat psoriatic arthritis? I like to call this our psoriatic arthritis treatment toolbox. And you can see I've separated it into several different categories. The first thing that is really important is the adjunct therapies, and we often forget about these. It is really important to include physical therapy, weight loss, exercise. We now know that the heavier you are with psoriasis, the more likely you are to develop psoriatic arthritis. It's actually almost exponential. As you increase your BMI, you increase your risk for psoriatic arthritis. Some people like to do dietary changes. We'll talk about that at the end, maybe a little with the microbiome that has become an area of great interest, but we don't want to forget about these types of therapies as we focus on the spectacular drugs that we have to use. Joint injections, by the way, if all the joints are better except one knee is still swollen or one finger joint is still swollen, I'll often use a steroid injection for that. So initially, as I said, we originally really just had, and by the way, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are very helpful for psoriatic arthritis, very helpful for the arthritis as an initial treatment. It's not going to change the course. Very helpful as a first-line agent for the enthesitis. Our earlier treatments were methotrexate and leflunomide, previously by the brand name Arava, oral medications that do sort of broadly suppress the immune system. Methotrexate was really the first thing that we had that was successful in treating both joint and skin disease. We now know that it does nothing for the spondylitis, for the inflammatory back pain, probably does very little for enthesitis, but it did get the inflammation in the joints under control. And that's what we had until the late 1990s or mid-1990s when the clinical trials were going on, and then the late 1990s when we saw this amazing improvement with a drug called etanercept early on. Maybe not anymore the best drug that we have, but what we saw in our clinical trials that we were doing at the time, suddenly people's skin was getting better, their joints and their joint inflammation was melting away, and that spawned this whole TNF-alpha inhibitor group. I like to explain a little bit what these drugs do, all of these new biologic drugs, and I know this is a very an audience very much in the know, but remember, these are anti-cytokines. Cytokines are cell-to-cell messengers that transmit a stimulus for inflammation. So if you have inflammation going on in your knee, then those cells are sending out what I like to call an invitation to the party. That inflammation is being promoted, is being accelerated through something called cytokines. Those cytokines I say, are kind of like an invitation to the party, gets sent out to the rest of the body, cells around the body, get that message, and then promote more inflammation both in that joint and elsewhere. So really what things like Enbrel, what etanercept, adalimumab, and infliximab are doing is they're intercepting one of those types of invitations called TNF-alpha, which we know is very important in the promotion of inflammation, before it can ever get to the other cell's mailbox, right? So if that cell in the distant part of the body never gets the message that there's inflammation going on, then that inflammation will slowly and progressively decrease and get better. And we have now discovered many different types of invitations that get sent out, many different types of cytokines, and different medications work on different cytokines. So the TNF-alpha inhibitors are the ones that we had first. Those do work on all the domains of psoriatic arthritis, and the ones with the stars next to them are options for spondylitis, because what we found out is some of these cytokines, inhibiting some of these cytokines, are helpful in one or multiple areas of psoriatic arthritis, but maybe not all. And it turns out that spondylitis is one of the ones that does not respond to all the different types of medication. So after the TNF inhibitors, we developed and we were able to use a number of other non-TNF biologic therapies, which you see in the upper right corner there, and that includes ustekinumab, which is an IL-12/23 inhibitor, apremilast, which is the PDE4 inhibitor that Dr. Gilbertson was just talking about, coming out now as a topical agent. Secukinumab and ixekizumab, also known as Cosentyx and Taltz, are IL-17A inhibitors, each inhibiting these different types of cytokines. Ustekinumab, secukinumab, ixekizumab, all very, very good at getting the skin psoriasis under control, and probably about the same overall, maybe some of them a little better in head-to-head trials at getting the joints under control when compared to the TNF inhibitors. We do so far have one, and then there's another agent, orenciabatacept, works through a different mechanism. It's a T-cell co-stimulation inhibitor. Won't get into that. That doesn't have very much effect on the skin, but it can help with the joints if other things haven't worked. We have one, well, actually we have two oral agents for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Otezla, approved for both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Xeljanz is approved for psoriatic arthritis and is very helpful for the arthritis. Probably not as good for the psoriasis, and we'll talk about a similar medicine that's coming out in the near future. The latest addition to the group for psoriatic arthritis is guselkumab, also known as Tremfya, just approved a few months ago for the treatment of psoriatic arthritis, and that is an IL-23 inhibitor. In development are a number of other medications that you recognize from earlier presentations here. And when I say in development, several of them, as you can see, have already been approved for the treatment of psoriasis, but have not yet been approved for the treatment of psoriatic arthritis. Bimekizumab, we'll talk about a little bit more in just a second. Let's go to the, actually, before we leave this slide, I want to just go back to the COVID issues that Dr. Gilbertson raised. And I do want to talk about it from what we know in the rheumatology community. As Dr. Gilbertson said, for right now, all of the societies have made recommendations that it is really important to stay on your medications and keep inflammation under control. One thing that has been very clear is that probably the worst thing you could do for COVID-19 is to allow the inflammation to really rev up. So people who have active, severe inflammation throughout their body are going to do worse with COVID-19. What we now know is that all of these medicines that you see here, all of these biologics, based on a fairly extensive database that has been compiled of patients with psoriatic arthritis and other rheumatic diseases, including rheumatoid arthritis and others, it looks like there is no increased risk of developing COVID-19 or catching COVID-19 from taking these medications. And at this point, it looks like people who are on these medications have no worse course if they develop COVID-19. In fact, there is some emerging data that being on a TNF inhibitor may actually provide some protection. It looks like patients who have been on TNF inhibitors, like you see in that bottom left corner there, have been less likely to end up in the ICU. And that might be because of suppression of inflammation in the lungs that, as you know, is the very severe thing that puts people on respirators. The one drug that we know for sure does increase your risk is prednisone. So many people have been on prednisone or steroids for their psoriasis or their psoriatic arthritis. We are trying to get people on the lowest possible dose right now that we can. If possible, that has been associated with worse course of being on steroids. It's interesting because, of course, as we all know, steroids are used in the worst cases of COVID-19 as well, but being on it at baseline may put you at more risk. Methotrexate has a little bit of a sure what the story is with that. So far, people have still been doing okay. All of these drugs should be stopped if you actually develop COVID-19, and that's the current recommendation until it's gone. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Excuse me, Dr. Siegel?
Yes.
Dr. Siegel, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are coming up to the Q&A time now, and we have a slew of questions for you and Dr. Gilbertson. So if maybe
I'm just gonna truck right through these.
All right, I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, we're just gonna, so for this, I'm just gonna say that the ACR and the NPF, the National Psoriasis Foundation and the American College of Rheumatology came up with guidelines late last year and early this year on how to choose from these therapies. For the first time, instead of methotrexate being the primary treatment that had to be tried first, it was recommended that a TNF be used early in patients with new onset psoriatic arthritis. We did promote a treat to target strategy and strongly recommended weight loss and smoking cessation. These were two of the most strong recommendations from the guidelines. Next slide. I'm going to skip over this just to say that treating to target, as I mentioned early, makes sense to be measuring something repetitively. You can see in those orange lines that if you do treat to a target and change therapy, if the target isn't met, rather than just saying kind of how you doing, okay, so pretty good, okay, we'll keep things as is, that people do better. Next. And we'll just quickly go through what is in the pipeline. So I mentioned that guselkumab or Tremfya was just approved in July for the treatment of psoriatic arthritis. We are very excited about bimekizumab coming out. Phase 2 trials showed excellent results in terms of arthritis improvement. Bimekizumab is another IL-17 inhibitor, but it inhibits two types of IL-17, A and F. Next. And then we do have a number of oral agents coming out. Upadacitinib, known already for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis as Rinvoq, is in late phase trials and probably about to be approved for psoriatic arthritis. And that does seem to, even though it's an oral agent, does seem to be helpful for both the psoriasis and the psoriatic arthritis. Very nice results. Another drug, which is like a JAK inhibitor, which just very briefly is like turning off the ability to produce those invitations, turns off the ability to produce cytokines, and that's what JAK inhibitors and TYK2 inhibitors do. This one is in early phase 2 studies with good results going on there. And then filgotinib, another JAK2 inhibitor that was just about to be approved for rheumatoid arthritis, is actually on hold by the FDA now. Let's go to the next slide, which I think is the last one. Tildrakizumab is also known as Ilumya, as you know, already approved for psoriasis, and I think it was mentioned earlier in the presentation that it's in clinical trials. It is in. It did show very good phase 2 clinical trial results with very good improvement in the psoriasis. but we're waiting for further studies. And the first drug to come out of Russia, netakimab, also approved for the treatment of psoriasis in Russia, and looks like it has very good potential for psoriatic arthritis. I would just encourage you that with all these things, you'll hear about them in the news, that many of them have only gone through phase 2 and sometimes phase 3, when we're really looking at a much bigger population and many more patients with the specific doses that are going to be used in the future. Sometimes those come out a little different. So just listen to these things with a bit of skepticism, but stay tuned for a lot of interesting things coming down the road. I think let's go to the next slide, and maybe what we'll do is, instead of talking about telehealth and things like that, up to you, moderators, we can pop into the question time.
Thanks, Dr. Siegel. Yeah, everybody's been chomping at the bit in the chat room to speak to you and Dr. Gilbertson. So I will hand it off to Bev and company to lob those questions into you.
Okie doke.
Okay, so the first question is for Dr. Gilbertson. Earlier we had someone mention inverse psoriasis, and could you explain a little bit more about what is inverse psoriasis?
Yeah, so normally psoriasis is affecting the elbows, knees, scalp, and some patients, unfortunately, they develop inverse psoriasis, which are these red scaly patches which appear sometimes in the armpits, in the folds of the groin, and the folds of the buttocks. And some people can have inverse psoriasis and they can have plaque type psoriasis together. What makes it difficult is, in those skin folds, you're very limited and don't want to use a lot of higher potency topical steroids. So your treatment options are a little bit more limited, as well as it's not uncommon that patients will develop secondary bacterial or fungal infections in those folds of skin, so you have to treat the secondary infection as well. We do also find that some biologics might clear somebody's plaque psoriasis, but not really help with their inverse or vice versa. So that's inverse psoriasis, is if you have it in the creases of the groin, the buttocks, or perhaps under the arms.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Siegel, how common is gout with psoriatic among patients who have psoriatic arthritis?
Yeah, we can see that complicating psoriatic arthritis, not often, but not infrequently. That's probably because gout is caused by uric acid. Uric acid is produced by the turnover of cells. So patients with psoriasis have a very high level of cell turnover, and that can then lead to high uric acid levels. If patients do have high uric acid levels, which are also associated with obesity and metabolic syndrome, which are common in patients with psoriasis, then that can lead to gout. Gout is a little bit different than psoriatic arthritis inflammation. It usually comes on extremely acutely, often just overnight, from normal to absolutely exquisitely painful, with severe redness and warmth associated with the joint, usually involving a joint of the foot, ankle, or knee, but it can involve the finger joints or the wrists, elbows as well. But the key is that it's a very acute and exquisitely painful onset. It's treated a little differently.
Oops. And another related question, how do you know if it's age-related arthritis versus psoriatic arthritis?
That's a great question, and one that even doctors struggle with at times. It's why I really encourage dermatologists to refer anybody with joint pain, especially because in psoriatic arthritis, it's very common to have the end joints of the fingers, the DIP joints of the fingers involved, and those are often the joints involved in osteoarthritis as well. The difference is usually that there is a significant amount of redness, warmth, and swelling associated with the psoriatic arthritis joints, and more of a bony appearance, just kind of knobbiness, no squishiness to the joints, but rather just a very hard bony feel to them, and sometimes a lot more what we call crepitance or rubbing that you can feel in the joints if we're talking about the knees or lower extremity joints. So, but good question, because that is a very difficult differentiation sometimes.
Thank you. And Dr. Gilbertson, why use a combination cream as compared with 2 or more individual creams? The combination creams usually don't have generics because they are new and they are much more expensive.
Right. So part of the advantage to that is it sometimes helps with compliance in terms of if you just put one cream on once a day versus putting one cream on for a few days and then a different cream on. The other thing is that combining a product with a topical steroid, so adding, for example, vitamin D preparations to a topical steroid probably decreases the atrophogenic or the skin thinning properties of that cream. Or for example, with Duobri, which is a topical retinoid, tazarotene, which can be super irritating to the skin, by combining that with a topical steroid, it increases its tolerance and efficacy. So it does work for some people. I agree with you that the newer agents tend to be more expensive. I think that the one that we have had for some time, Taclonex, I think did go generically not too long ago.
Okay, and for you both, is there any research being done on biologics and COVID-19 in terms of the biologics affecting your immune system and making it more likely to contract the virus?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. The answer is yes, there's tremendous research going on. Most of what I was talking about has to do with databases that have been compiled. There's an excellent series done in New York City by NYU of about 100 patients who all had contracted or were all followed during the height of the pandemic in New York City, and that's where the data came from, or some of the data came from, that patients on biologics did not seem to have a worse course. There's a much larger international database that's also being compiled, which is suggesting the same thing. The thinking about the biology of this right now is that although all of these medications can increase bacterial infections, and it's of course the main thing that we watch for, the main thing we tell patients to watch for when they are on these medications, that maybe they don't play as big a role in inhibiting viral infection prevention. That's why there are some bigger questions with steroids, which have more diffuse immune suppression, why there is an issue with some medicines for rheumatoid arthritis like Rituxan, which affects B cells, which are involved in early immune responses. So the story is still being written on this, and yes, there is extensive research into the biology of all this.
Dr. Gilbertson, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think we're starting to understand this as well, and in one sense, it's a little bit hard because we're at a point, and at least in terms of psoriasis treatments, where there's a ton of things that are coming out. But now, in addition to looking at other issues, you have to look if there's any issues in terms of COVID, and it is unclear because in one sense, some of these medications are controlling inflammation, which may be bad, but it also may be very good in that setting. So I agree with Dr. Steele. There's a lot of ongoing research. And I think, if a patient who's on a biologic does develop COVID, then that's a decision that needs to be made with the treating team if that medication needs to be stopped or not. I think in most cases it would be, unless there's data showing, for example, if they're on a TNF, and that actually might help with their outcome. But that's a decision that needs to be made upon, once a diagnosis like that is made.
Okay. And when a vaccine for COVID-19 does come out, is there any reason that someone on a biologic for psoriasis should be concerned about how it might interact with the vaccine? So Dr. Gilbertson, we'll let you go first with that.
I mean, I think as long as it's not a live vaccine, it should not be an issue. The issue is that patients who are on biologics should not be receiving any live vaccines. And so as long as it's not a live vaccine, it should not be an issue.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. As long as it's not a live vaccine, and to my knowledge, none of the ones that are being developed at this point are live. And yeah, I think protection against COVID in this situation is probably, in most situations, going to outweigh any issues with medications that we're currently using.
Okay, and Dr. Gilbertson, can you explain the connection between psoriasis and diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely, we understand in comorbidities that patients with psoriasis for various reasons, some of those possibly related to the fact that there's a tremendous amount of inflammation in the skin and in the immune system, do have an increased incidence of hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, many other different conditions. And so that's part of one of the things that we do with a new psoriasis patient is to make sure that they do have a primary doctor and they're getting their fasting blood sugar checked, et cetera. But we do know there's definitely an increased incidence.
Thank you. And Dr. Siegel, how quickly should treatment plans change if psoriatic arthritis is not well controlled and continued joint damage is occurring?
Right. So we tend to talk about giving each drug about 3 months to have its effect. That varies a little bit with different drugs. For example, Otezla may take a little bit longer in some situations, but if you use a treat to target approach, then in general, patients should be evaluated at more or less every 2 to 3 month intervals and with changes in therapy. And if something hasn't become effective in a fairly short period of time, again, say within 3 months or so, then some change should occur. Now, that could be a change to a different medication. It could be a change in dose. It could be an addition to medication. It could be a joint injection. But sort of keeping in mind all of the domains and making sure everything is coming under control with a particular medication at set intervals with set decisions as to what's going to be done if things aren't doing well.
Okay, I'll ask one last question for the both of you. And this has to do with oral biologics. Is there any research being done on oral biologics, and are they as effective as injectable biologics?
I think from a psoriasis standpoint, I did mention in my discussion about one new agent which is being released. And I think the goal is to find a oral biologic agent which is equally effective to some of the injectable biologics and maybe has a better safety profile. Otezla is effective for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. I don't think its PASI scores and ACR scores are as high as some of the biologics, but I think as time goes on, there is a move towards finding more and more oral biologic agents to be made available for treating psoriasis. There are not very many currently.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that, it depends on what you define as a biologic. We generally think about most of the injectable medications as biologics, and then the oral medications that are coming out now, the JAK inhibitors, the TYK2 inhibitors, as something called targeted synthetic disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So they're working a little differently, as I was trying to explain, by actually decreasing the production of cytokines in the most basic sense, as opposed to interacting with them once they've already been produced. But there has been a big push towards more oral agents, and I think we will see more and more of them because it's going to be easier to use, and as long as there aren't more side effects associated, then I think we'll probably see growth in that area.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today and taking time out of your Saturday.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Matt?
My unmute button does not like me.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much to both physicians and to everybody. I can't stress enough to you how much work these clinicians do outside of their office hours where we may see them. It truly is superhuman effort, and we really do owe them a great debt of gratitude. To follow up quickly related to this, I know there's a ton more questions that everybody has. A great resource, which I know Leah posted in here earlier, was our Patient Navigation Center. The website is, of course, psoriasis.org/navigation center. I'll put that in the chat room again. And now we'll cut immediately to our next presentation, which you can see there, will be a cooking demonstration presented by my very dear friend, Brenda Lynn Kahn. She has her own website called Refugee Kitchen, and she is a volunteer for the foundation and a psoriatic warrior, in addition to being a food blogger. So please put your virtual hands together for Brenda Lynn, as she's going to present to us how to make some miso tuna salad. And I'm going to stay sort of in here with her, and I may ask her a question or two as we go along or as I see them. So Brenda Lynn, the floor is yours, sweetheart.
Hi, I'm just waiting to see my camera. Oh, okay. Let me switch my, there we go. Am I okay, you guys? Can you guys see me okay if I stand back here? Babe, can you come? We're gonna adjust the camera real quick because it's kind of low. 1 second. I clean my kitchen for you guys. Down a little. There we go, right there. That's perfect. A little bit more up. That's good. Like right there, if you can tighten it right there. It's the boyfriend in the background. He's my Mr. Do-It-All. Thanks, babe. Hi, guys. Hey, man. How are you guys?
Hi, Brenda Lynn.
Everyone's on mute. I can't hear. I think we need a theme song, Matt. Can we do a theme song?
Oh, man.
Like the Brenda and Matt show? Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Do-do.
Do-do-do.
Yes, something like that. Also, by the way, I just had a birthday. I did a birthday fundraiser for the NPF, by the way, and I turned gray like overnight. It's insane.
It was probably the stress of presenting today.
It was. So I've been a volunteer. My name is Brenda, by the way, and I've been a volunteer with the foundation since 2004, which means I will not actually remove my age. We met in 2004, remember? So we are going to make one of my favorite snacks. It is miso tuna salad, and I developed this snack when I was in Hawaii last year because I went to a convenience store and I bought this variety pack of egg sandwich and tuna sandwich that was Japanese style, and I was in such a hurry. Instead of eating 2 separate sandwiches, I just ate the sandwich together and loved it. So I think that's how most of my recipes come out. Like, it's just because I loved it. So I wanted to talk to you guys about tuna really quickly. So tuna is normally, especially canned tuna, it's really high in sodium. But lately, there's been some great variety of no salt added tuna that I absolutely love. So I just wanted to share with you guys some stats real quick. So this is a regular canned tuna, just normal everything. The sodium level is 400 milligrams on this one, which is fairly high. And I follow a very low sodium, low carb, pescatarian diet. This is, I don't know if I can show the brand. This is my favorite brand of tuna. And this is a no salt added. And they come in a can variety too. And I normally buy them in a can. But when I went to the store, they didn't have them in a can. They just have the packages. But the sodium level on this particular tuna, no salt added, is 40 milligrams compared to, where were we at? 400. So 40, 400. So this tuna can be healthy. When I was developing this recipe, I kept thinking, God, tuna is so high in sodium. I don't want to eat that. It was when I found no salt added tuna that I absolutely love. So let's start with the ingredients. I know that Audrey sent out the list a while ago. So I'm going to do it in this bowl. Can you guys see it? I wanted to make sure everyone can see what was happening.
It looks good.
Okay. So in here, I have 2 egg yolks and 2.5 tablespoons of mayonnaise. Any type of mayonnaise you like. I happen to be using Kewpie mayonnaise, which is a Japanese variety of mayonnaise, but I've done this with vegan mayonnaise. I've done this with low-fat mayonnaise. I've done it with sour cream. So honestly, you can use any type of mayonnaise you like. I meant to put on gloves so I didn't have to wash my hands. 1 second. I've had such a good time reading the chat and following along, by the way, while I was here prepping and cleaning my kitchen. I saw Tammy and Jen, and I'm all excited. So we're gonna go ahead and mix together egg yolks and mayo, and now the most important ingredients, the miso. Does everyone know what miso is? If you don't, miso is an amazing fermented soybean Japanese seasoning, and it's used for soups, it's used for stews, marinades, and it is, because it is fermented, it has a lot of good probiotics. It is a gut happy food, and I try to add it to a lot of things. One of my favorite recipes is actually this on top of eggplant, and you grill it. Yum! So it's made of soybeans, salt, and koji. Koji is steamed rice with a culture added, and that's what causes the fermentation product, like the fermentation process. I was looking for my spoon. So the differences are, there's different colors miso. There's actually over 1,300 different varieties of miso available. So that's exciting. I'm using a white miso that is low in sodium. Because this is a salted fermented product, it can be very high in sodium. So I tend to use a light white miso because that has been fermented in a shorter period of time than say a red miso, because it's darker, it's saltier, and it's for more things like stews and marinades, so it can stand up to the flavor. Things like this in a salad or in a miso soup, you want to use white, lighter miso. Sometimes they call it sweet miso, and it's not actually sweet, it's because it has less sodium. So that's why it's called sweet miso. And depending on the variety of miso you get, I would say do it to taste. I know my particular variety, and I need about a tablespoon of this, but if yours is saltier, add less, and if yours isn't as salty, add more.
Hey, Brenda Lynn, since I know nothing about this, where can you buy miso?
So miso is really widely available now. Any good, well-stocked supermarket will have it. Sorry, any well-stocked supermarket will have miso. If you go to the refrigerator section where they usually sell tofu or like the soy products, or like soy chorizo, things of that nature, that's where you'll normally find miso. And if for whatever reason you can't find it in your grocery store, Amazon will ship it to you overnight in a freezer bag. Or like, you know, the cold
Yeah,
ice
Bezos
bag.
appreciates the plug.
Or any, you know, delivery service you might want to use. I'm also going to add, just because we have so many rich flavors, we have miso, we have mayo, we have egg yolks, we need to cut a little bit. So you can use lime juice or lemon juice. I just happen to like rice vinegar. Just need about a teaspoon. This rice vinegar is sodium-free, sugar-free. They do have seasoned rice vinegar, and you can use that too. It tastes delicious. I just prefer to use this one so I can control my salt intake. I noticed I used to be a little bit more free with my food. I used to eat more richly than I do now, and now with my new lifestyle of aging, oh, I can't believe I just said aging, of aging and taking care of my comorbidities, because I have such extreme psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, that this has now become a part of my life. So I'm gonna turn on my burner really quickly because I wanna toast a little bit of sesame seeds. I love sesame seeds. We're gonna start making the bulk of the actual recipe now. So I have white and black sesame seeds. They taste differently. I love the nuttiness of it, but you can use whatever you have available. So egg yolks, mayo, vinegar, miso in a paste. Now we're going to add 10 ounces of drained tuna. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of chopped red onions. We're going to add the egg whites, roughly chopped 2 egg whites. Let's do quite a bit of black pepper because I love black pepper. It's one of my favorite condiments. Would you call black pepper? No, it's a spice. I call it a condiment because I just put it on everything. Doesn't really matter. We'll add a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to do, you don't need salt depending on your miso, whether if it's salty enough, but I just want to do just a little bit of this salt because it rounds out the flavor. And now we just mix.
So Brenda, while you're mixing that, your seeds, you just have them in the frying pan on like a low heat?
Yep, low heat, dry pan. We're just gonna toast them just until they get fragrant and nutty. It just makes our food taste better. And that way you don't need a ton of salt. You don't need a ton of, you know, extras because you're gonna help bring out the flavor.
Gotcha, thank you.
Toast this gently and oh my goodness, this looks so good. Okay, okay. I'm gonna show you.
And just to give you a heads up, you're about halfway through your time slot, okay?
Yay! So really quickly, I forgot, miso has a ton of vitamins and it has vitamin B, E, K, and folic acid. I just wanted to put that in there because I totally memorized that to make sure I told you guys that. So we're gonna go ahead and just add a tablespoon or so of our seeds. I know I added red onions, but if you wanted to add celery, you can add diced celery. I don't personally like celery, so I didn't add celery. But along with the green onions, or the red onions, I also have some scallions that I'm gonna add just because there was some really great scallions at the market this morning. So I bought some. That's usually how I operate. If there's something really good, I'll buy it and I'll try it. Okay, let's mix all of that together. I am so excited. So serving size, you want to do about half a cup. That's what I do. It makes a great light snack. Well, more than a light snack. It makes a great light lunch and a fairly heavy snack. So let's do about half a cup of this. I think we have to make it look super pretty. We have to make it look pretty. Sometimes when I'm feeling extra spicy, I like to drizzle on some hot sesame oil. So I'm gonna do that now because this is right after I get off camera. Will be my lunch. I couldn't eat this morning because I was so nervous. Okay, drizzle.
When you say that's hot, obviously you're referring to spicy hot. So are we talking jalapeno hot, ghost pepper hot, or Carolina Reaper pepper hot?
Oh gosh, none of those. I would say it's more of like just a little sting, a Szechuan peppercorn hot.
Ah, durka.
Sting of a hotness. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a few more sesame seeds on top, and I'll show you guys how I normally like to eat this. So let's see. I'm gonna if I can get to the camera. Here it is. I keep seeing bloggers do this. It's like that. Yeah. So this is our miso tuna salad, and I normally like to have it with cucumbers. These are sprouted seed crackers that I absolutely love. Carrots, I actually like to cut my carrots like this, so more surface area. It's more like a chip, so when you dip, it's easier. I also have endive as well. Sorry, I used to be a caterer, by the way. So I used to be a caterer, and I started saying a lot of these vegetables with an accent just because I don't know why, it just made it a little bit like fancier and it made them want it more. So sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I put it in an endive leaf. No, I put it in an endive leaf. So anyway, thank you, Tammy. This is the miso tuna salad. Do you guys want to know the nutritional breakdown?
Sure.
Hey, Jim, I see Jim. Every so often, I'll see you guys, pop up on the chat. So I'm like, oh, it's Tammy, it's Jim, it's Audrey.
You're getting a lot of love in there, Brenda.
So for a half cup serving of this, the nutritional breakdown is calorie-wise, 199 calories. The fat is a little higher at 9.8, but your sodium is only at 200, with carbs coming in at 2.6 grams and proteins at a huge 24 grams of protein for this amazing recipe. It's very on par to how I eat now as a psoriatic. I do high protein, very low sugar, low sodium as much as I can, lots of clean eating. I want to say I'm 80% pescatarian with the other 20% happy meals.
Does that make you a pescatarian?
Yeah, I'm a pescatarian.
Okay.
Yay! Thanks, guys.
You did great, Brenda. Seriously, and that looks so easy. Even I could manage to make it, maybe.
I know. Oh, and it keeps in the refrigerator for 3 to 4 days. And honestly, when I do this for the boyfriend, I'll spread it on light toast and put some avocado on top. And we'll call that your tuna avocado toast too. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Can someone grab a screenshot of me? One of my friends who have me on their social media. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, there were probably about, I don't know, 70 pictures of you just taken. So yeah, your Facebook account may break down in about 5 minutes or so. So anyway, you did a great job. I don't know why you were nervous. Plenty of people said that in the chat room. And thank you very much, sweetheart. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you, NPF. Bye, guys.
All right, Matt, looks like we're coming to the wonderful end of this conference. It's been great. So let's keep going.
Yeah, guys. So listen, thanks for sticking in here with us today. And we are, sort of have a little wrap up comments I'm going to make. And then I'm going to make a little announcement. And I hope everybody will stay for a little social time. I've tried to tie in some of your interesting facts that you put on your, when you registered, into a way for us to kind of start some dialogue here, only for people who are comfortable to. So anyway, the first item we need to clean up, for those of you in the States, you'll be receiving conference materials with the usual related swag, as well as informative materials. And I know we've mentioned a number of times the Patient Navigation Center. So in addition to the links that you've seen here, there's also be a little Patient Navigation Center information card for those of you who are not familiar with it. If you have not done so already, please connect with the foundation via social media. We have all the forums that you would normally think of: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And you could also go to psoriasis.org and sign up for email alerts. Bev, I lost my screen to see where you are. There you are. I see you got it. So, and we also will make sure again that your name in the chat room matches how you registered for the event, or at least, you know, has your first name and last name so we can narrow it down. You're all going to receive a follow-up email. It's going to include the recording of today's event. It's going to include Brenda Lynn's recipe, along with some other items. So I think that covers all that, right, Jane?
Yep, Matt, I think you got all the business out of the way there, and I'm just waiting for the exciting news. I'm not hitting enter until you tell me to.
Okay. Listen, guys, hang on a moment. I'm trying to get my presentation to maximize here. There we go. So we've talked a lot about people volunteering and all of the work that we do, for all of the wonderful dedicated work of the people within the foundation, for all of the incredible physicians who work with us. None of this would be possible without the volunteers who do so much work. And I see in the chat room here, and there are plenty of them who are not represented here today. And in honor of their efforts, while they're all noteworthy, we attempt to honor a specific individual each year for their efforts within the foundation. This year's recipient is involved in every facet of the activities that the foundation takes part in. And I think everyone will concur that the person's well deserving of this award. So without further ado, it is indeed my great pleasure to announce the 2020 National Psoriasis Foundation Volunteer of the Year is Jen Pellegrin.
Woo!
Jen, you there?
I am.
Are you verklempt?
I'm speechless. Wow, thank you guys.
Congratulations and thank you. So it like I said, it's well deserved, and we all know there's plenty of people who deserve this honor, but really, truly, you are indeed a psoriatic superhero.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
And look at the congrats in the chat, Jen. It's amazing. You deserve it.
Thank you.
So you know what, Jen, if you don't mind, if I can single you out here for a minute. We've had about 15% of the attendees today are new to the foundation, right? And they've heard a lot today about what we do, but perhaps maybe you could tell them what it has meant for you to be involved in the foundation.
Oh, wow. So as you can probably, as Matt said, thank you, Matt. Now I lost my train of thought because
I derailed it.
I'm speechless, and a lot of you guys know that's very impossible for me. So the foundation, I mean, when I found the foundation, however many years ago was it, because I had to do a research paper, I didn't know the amount of family I would find that was out there that I knew I was missing. The resources that the NPF has. I'm in nursing school, and I think I owe it to the NPF, my nursing career, just because they've taught me how to advocate for myself, how to get involved, and just the resources at our fingertips. We don't realize how powerful when we're together, strength in numbers. And it's just, you don't realize, it's like a baby, we're all family. You meet those and talk to those who have the disease. So you don't realize it until you don't have it. But I absolutely love the NPF and I love being a volunteer. I love being an advocate. I love the people that I volunteer alongside of.
Thanks, Jen. So that's awesome. You know, one thing I'll say to all of the newbies, you know, we know at times this disease can be really hard, not just physically, but emotionally, right? And this is something that I promise you. From this day forward, the foundation will always be here for you. But we, all of these people you've seen in the chat room, people like Jen, people, the other comments you've seen, will be here for you individually. And you'll never have to walk this road alone again. So please remember that. If there's anything I said today, remember that. Okay, so guys, let's have a little bit of fun. Jane, are you going to open up microphones for everybody as we go along here and just let people chime in, or?
Well, it'd help if I opened up my own microphone, wouldn't it, Matt?
I don't know what that's like at all.
Not at all. Actually, if people want to go ahead and unmute themselves, that would be the fastest way of doing it. And if they want to turn cameras on, and I just wanted to share a little slide here of some of our fantastic volunteers.
Yes, they
but I'd
are.
actually like to see people, I'd rather focus on everyone else's camera. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see cameras.
All right, guys, so here's what I'm going to do. Like I said, you've all put some fun facts, or I call them fun facts. I think they call them interesting. And I'm going to kind of shout out some of the topics. Feel free to chime in. We have about 14 minutes or so until we're scheduled to end today. So let's have a little fun with this.
I don't know what I
The
did.
topic I'm going to throw out there, and I love this. It was written with an exclamation point. I love to dance. So who loves to dance out there?
Me.
And what, any particular type of dancing?
Yes. Oh, come on, guys. I'll start off here. I love to do folk dancing. In college, I was so into that, where I did dances from Macedonia, Yugoslavia, Hungary. I love the Baltic countries, but I also did Norway and Sweden. So what other types of dances are out there?
Bingo. So that was my fun fact. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa. I love to dance with an exclamation point. For those of you who don't know me yet, I used to be a competitive ballet dancer, but those years are sadly behind me. And now I love all kinds of dance. I'm a very dorky dancer, but I would say my #1 dance is like when I'm cooking in the kitchen and I put on music and just kind of like bop around. But it's like my favorite thing to do, and I have like a whole playlist for it and everything. So if anyone else is a dorky dancer, I want to hear from you. We need to be represented in dance.
How can a ballerina be a dorky dancer?
Doesn't translate well, not as well as you'd hope. Any other dancers or any other favorite dance songs? Because I'll update my playlist. I'll let you guys know.
So I am
disco.
Oh my God, disco. There she goes, look.
There it is.
I can add it. I'm down.
Hey, Jody.
Yes, R&B music is good to dance to. This is Sheila.
Hey, Sheila.
How are you?
Good. I've always loved to dance, to be honest. And yeah, I'm probably a dorky dancer, but you know, you dance like no one's watching, right?
Yeah. I love dancing, always did.
Cool. Any particular kind or just anything? As long as you can shake your boogie anywhere?
No, I don't do that anywhere, but R&B, country, disco, R&B, the good music, yes,
I
yes.
understand.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Nice meeting you.
nice meeting you too. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.
Always do. I'm learning.
That's what it's all about.
Amen. So look, if people like dance, there's got to be a lot of people out there who like music. We were just talking about music. Who likes music or who are musicians?
Go ahead, Skeeter. He can't see your
Hey,
head.
Matt. It's Skeeter.
Hey, dude.
How you doing?
I'm good.
So everybody, I've been involved with local music in Pittsburgh for quite a number of years, and the bands that I've been in have had the pleasure of being able to be part of Tammy's Tipping the Scale to Psoriasis fundraisers every February. So the first one, she had 4 bands. I was in all 4. It was insane. But anyway, we tiered it down a bit, but it's a lot of fun, and it's just, and the guys just we love to play. We would play at a car crash as long as somebody didn't get hurt, right? So it's a fun dance, a lot of fun.
Yeah, don't ever have 4 bands at a fundraiser. It's like herding 25 2-year-olds.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Matt, this is John. I actually, I've been learning how to play the guitar, and I actually played for the staff meeting for Chris, about a month ago? And so, yeah, that was interesting.
That's awesome, John. I remember when you were taking lessons. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, I was about 3 years now, so I enjoy it. It's one of my retirement activities that I've been involved in. So
Cool. Anybody else who's musically inclined?
Start playing the bell down at the shopping center.
There he is. There he is. We should put an NPF band together.
Yeah. Putting a band together, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Nicole, were you going to say something related to music?
I haven't played an instrument since college.
What did you play in college?
The flute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to pick it up again if we put together an NPF band?
I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't even know where it is. I would say my father's attic, but he cleaned it out years ago.
Aww.
He's doing one of his cleaning trips, clean it or I'll get rid of it things. So.
Cool. So, we spoke today about, we did the Tai Chi sessions and, talked about some other things for mental health, and definitely in the chat room, goat yoga seemed to be a big hit. So specifically, I'd love to hear about goat yoga, whoever took part in it. But I also wanted to ask, who does other things perhaps for their physical and mental health, whether it's Tai Chi or yoga or hiking? And I see Steve, and you just put your hand up?
Yes, I go kayaking almost every day. And those of you who are Facebook friends of mine, and actually even if you're not, if you just look me up on Facebook, you'll see a lot of wildlife photography.
Ah, so that's where all those photographs come from. You're hiking and kayaking.
Well, mostly kayaking. I live on Little Hunting Creek, which is a tributary of the Potomac. It's property that used to belong to George Washington. And so I go out. Recently, I've been communing with some double-crested cormorants and with little green heron that has its nest about, maybe 20 seconds from my backyard.
Cool. That's really neat. It's really great watching birds. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started knitting maybe about 2-3 years ago. It's supposed to be good exercise for your hands, especially if you have arthritis.
Right.
So I started doing that. So that seems to help.
Good.
Yeah,
So-
I'm an avid knitter as well, and I just started doing embroidery during COVID, and it's the same thing.
I might go back up there and see if they still got that.
Also, I haven't done goat yoga through an NPF, but I do it here in Columbus. I don't know if you can see this. It's so much fun.
Goat yoga, like actual goat.
Yeah, it's actual goats. Yeah, it's so much fun. I was actually a little bummed out the first time that I went because the goats were like larger goats.
Yes.
But it's still fun. It's a good time.
Aren't you concerned about them? Like,
what do you do?
I mean, eating your.
You just do yoga and you're surrounded by goats, and sometimes they'll like come over and nibble on your mat and like make it hard to do positions and stuff.
Or
but
they'll
yeah,
come jump on you.
Yeah, or they'll jump on you if they're small enough. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
We did in California and San Diego or Orange County have goat yoga. I didn't personally go, and I don't know if Jennifer's still on, if you remember who that was. It might have been Jessie. But they sent pictures of people doing yoga, and the yoga had jumped on a woman's back. It was pretty funny.
I'm in San Diego, and I need to know where I go to join the goat yoga. Where do I sign up? I need to
I'll
sign
find
up.
out for you.
Thank you.
Are you in our group? What's your name?
I'm Cassie King. I'm new here.
Oh,
I actually recently got diagnosed last. I joined the virtual active day, and then Jen actually got me more involved, and basically told me to join today. And I was like, I gotta join.
Perfect. Well, welcome. Welcome. We're a really fun group in San Diego.
I love it.
Even more fun than Matt's group that dresses up as pirates and comes to our
Well, I'm trying to make San Diego the best. So
All
what I
right.
can do to help, let me know.
Good. I like that competitive spirit. We're ready for you.
Yes, bring it on.
Excellent.
I just moved to California, but I'm ready to head south and join your group because I'm in the north. But you guys sound awesome. I'm all in for the goat yoga.
All right, good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, how about this? The other thing that I thought was interesting, obviously I mentioned before we had people from all over the world. And so that made me think, and there were also some people who said they weren't from the States, but they reside here now. So that made me think, like, travel. Who likes to travel, or who's been overseas, or which?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You got all kinds of hands.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, how are you?
Surviving.
Yeah, no travel these days.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know. If everything that went on hold this year happens next year, you guys won't see me for 6 months.
Right, the same with us. Mike, you got on your cruise, right?
I did, right the week before COVID they shut things down in March. I went on first March 8th, and then we got off the boat, and it's like I was getting onto a, everybody has hazmat suits on, and we got the last cruise out, but now we're
So
pretty...
you're the one who brought it here.
No. It wasn't me.
Spreader.
Went out and hang out with Cape Cod, and Jody came out a couple weeks ago to see me, so we're working out here in the Cape, and we love it out here, so we're staying safe.
Yeah, Mike has a summer place near me, so it was nice to be able to connect with someone with the NPF, even though he's from New York technically, and I'm from Massachusetts, so it was great.
I'm on the Cape this weekend. If you want to stop by, we have coffee.
Well, I'm in Plymouth. I'm home.
Okay.
Where's the drink?
We'll have
Happy hour here. It's happy hour here.
Hey, well, if you want to come to San Antonio.
Yes. I'll go anywhere.
We have, now we're designated as National Heritage Site.
Ooh.
We have 5 missions and we're close to the border, just about 2.5 hours from the border to Mexico.
Info, that's close by Texas terms, but not for the rest of the country.
But if you come down to San Antonio, you can go way out there. Have fun here.
All right, guys. Well, anything else someone wants to throw out there? We're approaching our cutoff time, so.
Yeah.
Good?
I miss you guys.
Just
Miss
one
you all.
simple thing for everyone, be safe.
I miss all of you guys.
Thanks, Stephen.
I miss you all.
Hi, you all. Matt, great job today being moderator and all. Well done.
Yes, thank you, Matt.
Matt,
Hey, guys,
where's my
thank
mama
you.
cat? Why hasn't she jumped on the screen?
Cat's been on there a couple
I'm
times.
on here.
I don't see you. I think it's on the. Oh, they took it from the thingy.
There she is.
I have to
Here,
click on
I'm
active.
repping, you know, my candidate.
There you are. Sorry, I have to do the active because then if I don't do active, Tammy. I like it when everybody pops up. It's like, oh, surprise.
Jody, you got any fringe on?
I don't. I'm
Me
sorry.
neither.
I think I have fringe in my gutchies.
Oh, stop it.
You see? Hey, I tell her. She said yes.
Oh, geez.
In trouble.
Oh, gosh.
Well.
All right, guys. Well, please, thank you for everything. Great job. Love to everybody. Oh, I turned my camera off since you've been seeing me all day anyway. Thanks, and hey, to Chris and Leah and Jane and Audrey, thank you for putting this all together and doing this today. Have a great weekend and hang loose, everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye,
you
guys.
Bye,
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again, Jane.
Matt, you were fantastic.
I'm glad you think so. Look, I'll send an email, but obviously I think it went well and we should have a debrief. So, but yeah.
We're going to. Yep.
All
Yep.
right, outstanding.
So
You have a great rest of
fantastic.
the weekend. Thank you.
Go get something to drink. You need it now.
Yeah, well, my dog is telling me he needs to eat and go out. So
Enjoy. Thanks, Matt.
bye, everybody.
Hey, boss, that was great.
Oh, you have a voice.
Well, you know, there's been a lot of people emailing, so, but I've learned a lot today. This has been great.
This was a fantastic one. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting and I'll give you a call.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.